Hey y'all, today we are going to be talking about some sensitive topics. Specifically, we are going to be defining the difference between pedophilia and sexual predators, and we are going to get really specific on that. So heads up on that if you are not in a place where you can hear those definitions and be well at the end. This would be a great episode to skip. And we have some very special guests in the house. We have Julia Sanders here with us today from Analyzing Mormonism. Julia, do you want to say hello?
Hi.
And joining Julia is her very sexy partner, America Marvel.
Well, thanks.
I say that almost always about Mason. I'm joined by my very sexy co-host,
But she
Mason.
can only say it once, obviously. She didn't say it about me this time.
You're not sexy today. It's, yeah.
I know.
I'm sorry.
I like the Hawaiian shirt.
Oh, now you're looking. Wait, unbutton it more. Hey, ladies, just close your eyes. Hang on,
They
give
don't
us
care.
a second.
Don't worry about it. We're
They're not
lesbian. This
interested.
makes
They're
no
not interested,
difference.
so yeah, it's okay.
Unpacking Mormonism and other religious trauma is meant for educational purposes only. Hello and welcome back to Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma. I'm your host for the day, just like I am every day, Sarah Westbrook, joined today by my co-host Mason Westbrook, and we have some very special guests in the house. We have Julia Sanders here with us today from Analyzing Mormonism. Julia, do you want to say hello?
Hi.
And joining Julia is her very sexy partner, America Marvel. Okay, so we are starting, this is going to be episode number 3 in our truth-telling series. And our
In
intent...
episode 203 for season 2.
Yes, we for those of you who are watching, we went from like episode, 60 to episode 201. That is because the 2, like a college course, is demonstrating season 2. So I do know
harder,
how to count.
Right? It's harder.
It is harder. It's supposed to be harder. Yes, we're actually hoping that this season will be a little bit more heavy on the mental health interventions, because if you've been listening from the beginning, you have a lot of the basics put into place. But our intent for today is to understand the value of reality-based data and the value of speaking the truth even when the data is ugly. And so I invited Julia on today because I'm going to be honest with you, Julia. I love your ability to take really complex historical facts and smash it down into like a less than 60-second TikTok. So I'd love to give you guys the opportunity.
That's ADHD talking, by the way.
What?
Yeah, well,
That's ADHD talking.
What do you mean?
The fact that you like the 30 to 60 second
yeah,
blips,
that's
it's
true.
your ADHD
well,
talking.
that's a good part. Good part of her audience is ADHD ex-Mormons. Everyone who has any kind of social media.
Yes, that's true, Mason. I didn't catch what you were referring to. So, all right. So, Julia, I'd love to give you and America a chance to tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you're doing and what projects you're working on right now. So, anchors away, and we will put all of the links for those of our listeners who
anchors
would
away.
like to. Yeah, I'm a sailor.
No, you're not.
Stop interrupting
You're an army
me.
wife.
But do you curse like one?
Oh, yes.
Oh, fuck yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, I do. Thank you
Thanks
for
for
letting
that.
me
Yeah, thank you.
get that F-bomb out right at the beginning of the gate. No,
Right, because
we
it wouldn't
will-
have come out later.
Hell no. So yeah, we are going to leave links to everything that Julia is talking about today in the show notes. So if you are interested in following Analyzing Mormonism, either the TikTok or the podcast or the publishing company, we will have links to that in the show notes. So please head over there and get your data.
Yeah. So yeah, I have a TikTok. That's where I post all my videos primarily. And then I have a YouTube that I'm trying to funnel all my videos onto there. And then the same with Instagram. And I have a website where I try to post all my sources. It's analyzingmormonism.com. And what else? So yeah, we do have a publishing company, my partner and I. It's called Edina Publishers, Edina. and our primary focus is to publish LGBTQ affirming literature, because we feel like, as we're entering this space of being in the LGBTQ community, we're like, there's really not that much out there. So we're just supportive of every company that's publishing these queer books, and we also want to give that to the world too. So that's our main focus, but it's a slow thing. We've got all these things coming, all these manuscripts coming in. And so in the meantime, and because it's a passion of mine, is I want to republish these out-of-print Mormon books, or the ones that are in the public domain. So right now we have the William Smith book, William Smith on Mormonism. You can get on Amazon. And then we have the Nauvoo Expositor coming out soon. I think you can pre-order it on Amazon.
Yep.
Yeah, you can pre-order that now. And then our next book coming up is Annalisa Young's book, Wife Number 19, because she was a...
Guys, it's so good to read. It's so interesting.
In what way is it interesting, America?
Oh my God. Okay, so I've been doing the editing for Annalisa Young's book, and she has some just like mind-blowing stories, and she's telling you from her perspective as a wife of Brigham Young. And then she divorced him, by the way, and which was not, that was the first legal situation where they ever had to experience that, because polygamy was not legal. And so they both argued, this is illegal. You can't divorce someone that you weren't legally married to, but also like you
I
have
own
to
you, right?
I own you. It was very complicated. Anyway, she has some great stories. She is contemporary with John D. Lee, who was the man killed. He was put to death for
executed for
the Mountain Meadows Massacre,
yeah.
which we are also publishing his book. That will be after Wife Number 19, and he also has some really interesting things to say. Anyway, there
obviously can't be trusted because
well,
Didn't 10 of Brigham Young's wives end up divorcing him?
I don't know that. I haven't got to that point in his history. This is actually the first time I'm reading any of these Mormon history books as a person who only left the Mormon church a couple of years ago. But man, are they blowing my mind. Like, I did not know any of this stuff. I graduated from BYU, Idaho, and I was proud of that until now.
Yes, I told my kids when they were getting ready for school, I was like, you can go anywhere but BYU, Idaho. Like, please don't. Just quality of education matters in this world. No, one of the things that's really fascinating to me is that when I was growing up, I was taught, as a Mormon, I was taught that Brigham Young's home was peaceful and loving and beautiful. And they would show us these pictures, and they said because the Spirit of the Lord was there, and that I remember being told all of his wives talked about how beautiful of a relationship they all had. And then now that I'm on this other side, it's like, oh my goodness, even just reading like Compton's book, and those are Joseph Smith's wives, and going back, I remember, Mason, your mom was reading something. Was Eliza Snow married to Brigham Young? Was she one of his wives?
She was married to both of them, actually.
Yes, she was.
And I think it was her that was like giving Brigham Young some grief at one point. And she was like, I love this. She was putting him in his place. And your mom said that to me. And I was like, it's just incredible to me that, because why would I have questioned when I was growing up in Snowflake, Arizona, where everybody is Mormon and everybody is like, those polygamous homes were so happy. Mm-hmm. And then on this side, number one, being married and knowing that I can only handle one husband, and Mason can barely handle me.
I don't think I handle it. I don't think I even handle. No.
Right?
Handle's the wrong term.
But yeah, just to be able to hear the story of wife number 19 saying this is not true. What's been said about us is just not accurate.
Yeah, exactly. And she's also speaking from the perspective of not just a polygamous wife of Brigham Young. She was raised by a polygamous, her parents were polygamous. They were one of the first. They actually, if you go to Nauvoo, which we just went to recently, they actually, Chauncey Webb was her father, and he was the guy who made the hand carts helped. He did a part of it. I don't know.
He was a blacksmith there, right?
Yeah, he was a blacksmith there, and he made the metal parts of that.
My cousins are related to him as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. they literally lived across the street from Brigham Young. And so they were one of the very first families involved in polygamy. And she talks about her mother's perspective and how her mother didn't want to do it. She hated it, but she believed 100% that this was the way. This is what God wanted her to do. And so she herself gave her husband this first wife, and it all went downhill from there. And her mother was so unhappy in polygamy, but she was determined to do it the right way. And she knew that these wives that were coming in had no choice in the matter either. And so she was polite to them. She treated them with love and care, and like they essentially held each other together. So Annalisa Young is witnessing this as a child growing up and seeing it the way it's supposed to be done, quote unquote. Right. And she knows it's still awful. Like her mother is heartbroken all the time.
And lonely, I'm sure.
And
like
lonely.
So lonely.
And she sees as her father becomes like less and less empathetic towards all of these wives that he's just collecting. Like she says in her book, I'm not going to quote it directly, but essentially like polygamy makes the women just a heartbroken stone of a person, because you have to not have a heart or like have any feelings whatsoever in order to survive. And then it turns the men into animals who treat their women as chattel. And it's
That's
just
incredible.
awful.
It would be so fascinating to see if you could get some of these books into like the FLDS community, where they could see that they are not alone, that because you look at them and I don't think I've ever, and I mean, I know the media is not the best portrayal of accurate factual truth, but in the times that I've seen them well, I know, right? My parents lived in Kanab for a little while, Kanab, Utah. And so when we would go to visit them, there was a lot of the Colorado City FLDS individuals and just around, and they were never smiling. These women of these children, I don't remember ever seeing them smile. And then as people have left that community and they're now outspoken, you hear some of those horror stories. It would be amazing to see if you guys could get your books, which are, because you're not changing anything, correct? You're just
we're only editing for readability.
Yeah.
And she actually that's another thing she describes in her book. It actually is how it became like a stereotype that Mormon women were ugly. She's remonstrating against the press who were described like, oh, the ugly Mormon women, because it was a stereotype, because they were so dragged down. And they're like, she's like, when they're young, they're beautiful enough. They're very commonly,
happy-go-lucky, right?
Young women.
Normal
but as soon as you
teenagers.
enter into polygamy, you start to be deteriorated and destroyed, and your confidence is gone. And yes.
Well, and marriage is hard enough.
Marriage is hard enough.
Just starting, whether man, woman, woman, man, whatever. Marriage is hard enough with just one partner to work with, and it makes perfect sense that as you have more partners in the relationship, there's going to be more distance. There's going to be more. Frankly, as a husband, I do a lot of changing simply because I have needs too.
Right.
Right?
You
and
have
same
needs?
same for both
You
sides,
don't
right?
have needs.
You're right. I'm sorry. I'm just a stone. I'm a rock. I'm an island.
A foundation upon which we will build.
But when there's just the two of you, you have to do those kinds of things. You have to change. You have to adapt. You have to learn how that person, you have to learn what their needs are. You have to learn how to meet those needs and to help that person in any way you can. Not that, looking at Sarah, your happiness is not my responsibility, and we've talked about this before, but I have a great impact on your happiness.
You influence my happiness.
Right, and vice versa.
By the way that we interface with each other.
And frankly, now if I'm a man that has 3 wives or 10 wives,
and you're not trying
even if
at
I
all
wanted
to take care of their happiness.
Right, even if I wanted to, I couldn't do it. I don't have the capacity to meet 10 people's needs, and now you add children into that as well. I don't have the capacity for that, and I don't think that anyone does.
Right.
And I think that, we're not talking about polygamy, of course, but there's been this idea that the story that we're telling, well, they were happy. They did this. It's a bunch of bull crap. Really, they made the best they could out of a situation they couldn't control.
And they were told that God told them to do it. So of course you're going to pretend like you're happy.
Right.
You're not going to speak out against it. And like, imagine being in that situation where you're one of 3 to 15 to 52 wives of the prophet or
Right.
just any regular dude.
Right.
But they are the authority, and it is up to them, anything that has to do with you, anything at all. So she tells a story of needing fur for her coat because it was cold in Utah, and she goes to Brigham Young and asks for fur for her coat. And he rants and rails about how she's trying to run him into the ground with her. She says that any of his wives that go to ask for anything, that's what he does. And so all of the wives are living in poverty, and he eventually essentially tells her to fend for herself, and she takes on boarders and
a lot of
houses
these
people.
women did.
Yeah.
When you look at the real history, they
That's
weren't
what they had to
supported
run.
by
They
these
had to do
husbands.
these things themselves.
Yeah.
But imagine, not only all of that, but then you are told this is the right way and he is correct. And you must listen to everything he says. He is correct. And if he tells you, I'm not going to see you for, or even, he wouldn't say this to you, but he would just not see you for 5 years.
Right.
And you'd be
Right.
raising your kids alone.
Right.
And then he'd show up one day and say, hey, I came for a visit. Like, let's go in the bedroom.
Right.
And that's just what this is done.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
Yeah.
and from a mental health perspective, when we are in a religious community that says this is going to be the heaven that you inherit,
exactly.
you know, I wonder, it would be so amazing if one of those men could actually speak out about the harshness and the challenges of having that many women in that time period where women didn't have the same rights or even abilities to care for themselves. If one of them would actually be able to say, you know what, I'm really not enjoying this whole polygamy thing either.
And they
like
were
there's some
pressured
perks.
into it.
There might be some, perks for the guy. Yeah, maybe there were some perks for the women. I don't know. I don't see that.
Maybe if you were lesbians.
Maybe
It's a perfect
Yeah.
cover. I'm going to write a book about it. I'm telling
Well,
you.
and there's
cannot
the
wait
concept
to read
of
that book.
there's the concept of sister wives, right? Like you
Right.
have friends that if you're able to work through the jealousy that would seem like it would be intrinsic in that situation, then of course you'll have some very true friendships and things like that. So I would think you would have to say there are perks on both sides.
I would say that there could be. There are some examples of sisters marrying the same husband, and I expect that kind of, because they're married at the same time, they go into it knowing they're going to stay together.
Right.
You essentially you go into it consensually knowing
Yes.
I'm going to be one of more than one, and we're going to share, and this is just the way it's going to be.
Right.
A lot of the time, when a woman is first married to the man, she is his favorite for a short time.
Right.
And they go through this honeymoon period.
And
And,
then
then
that
she
changes,
essentially
yeah.
gets cast off. And
kinda
then
like a
goes
new
through a
car.
heartbreak. Yeah.
It's kind of like a new car. I only
But
like
she
the
just has to-
classic one. But every new car I get, ooh, this one's just a little bit better. I'm bored.
Yes.
Ooh, this one's a little bit better.
But she
ooh,
has
this
to
one has
stick
Bluetooth.
around and watch
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just go, because the favorite wife also gets all the monetary situation, and
Right.
the less favorite wives just get kicked to go live in the farm.
Well, and what I love about this is you're telling the truth of her story. We can then take that and say, okay, let's look at this data. Let's start compiling these stories of the women. And if we had that data for the men, because do we even have data of men saying this is the best thing ever?
The
Like-
prophets did, but
prophets did?
So yeah, I'm sure there's
But with that
a
data,
lot
we can
more
say-
to it for the other side.
Okay,
yeah.
what does this mean for me? Because I remember listening to, and Mason, we're going to need to find this on the Mormon stories. I know, I'm sorry. Find it, put it in there. That's Mason's job.
Mormon Stories or Mormonism Live?
No,
Because
Mormon
Stories
Stories.
is a much bigger deal.
It's Mormon stories, right? There's a lot there. No, Mormon stories where John Larson breaks down the math of what it would mean to be a polygamous wife in heaven, and even if you had 1,000 wives.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, and then you're breaking that down, and what does that look like? So we've got the math data side of what are the logistics of this? What does this logistically look at? But then this book that you guys are working on bringing to the public awareness is, okay, what was the experiential data. And what does that look like? Because for me, from the time I was itty bitty, the only doctrine that really bothered me was polygamy, because my future didn't look so good. And when I look at that, if Mormonism is true, which it's not, but if it was, I don't want to be in the celestial kingdom.
Right.
I would rather be in a lower kingdom where all of my desire for sex is taken from me and I just get to live happily ever after with peers I don't sleep with. That sounds more heavenly to me than this life of
giving
polygamy.
birth for eternity.
Right, giving birth
That's just because you've never had sex with yourself, hon.
wanna bet? Hey, head on over to Amazon and buy your copy of Trauma Bonded, a true story of navigating attachments forged in complex PTSD by me, Sarah Westbrook.
So I just had a thought too.
Squirrel!
For me, you don't have to go any further. If you're questioning the healthiness of polygamy, you don't have to go any farther than saying we'll flip it around
Right.
and just see what happens. So now one woman has several husbands, and let's see how the men handle this. And I guarantee that very few are going to handle it at all, unless it comes under this guise of this is what the Lord wants. A lot of us would fall in line, but none of us would like it.
Right. And that's what the women did. They
And
didn't
that's what
like
the women
it,
did
but they
because
fell in
they
line
submitted because they felt like they didn't have much choice. And they felt like God commanded it, or they just couldn't get away from whoever said it was God's command.
Or they got trafficked into the middle of Utah and couldn't get out.
Right. They had no other choices. And of course, you talked about that on the episode that you did at Mormon Stories too, just that, what choice do we have at this point in time? So,
Yeah, Julia, that was one of my favorite episodes of Mormon Stories. I mean,
Thank you.
anything John Larson is probably in my top, however many
He's awesome.
done
He's so
now.
good.
Yeah. But I absolutely loved your episode on human trafficking and just looking at that from a Mormon perspective, because of course Sound of Freedom is super popular right now, and you've got Tim Ballard, who is like an advocate against human trafficking, but he's a believing Mormon, and the founders of his church were human traffickers.
Exactly.
It's just such a goofy paradigm. So
Yeah.
all right, so we totally derailed your
Yeah, we kinda did. That
introduction.
That was 100% my fault. I
We're not
apologize.
going to get very far in here if we can't even get through the introductions.
This is pretty normal.
But for those of you that
us.
don't know, we've just spent the last 3 hours just shooting the breeze, trying to get to know each other. So at least we got that out of the way.
It has been great conversation. All right, go ahead, Julia. Why don't we?
Well, I was just going to say that's a book we're working on, going back. Life number 19. Look out for that. I'm trying to think of what else.
Just move on.
Yeah. Anyway, what?
just move on. What they're saying is we have so many projects in the works right now.
We really do. She has a list of, I'm not kidding you, 20, 25, 30 books.
And I keep finding more every day. I find more books because I'm like, this has a lot of good truth claims in it. Like, I love looking at when I do my research, I look at the very original source. Like, give me the actual yellowed pages or the original handwriting. That's what I like.
Right.
And so I keep finding more books. I'm like, oh yeah, we could publish this one. And then so anyway, I had
So this is like the meme of the person that says that they have this stack of the really tall stack of books. This is the books I want to read, and then the really short stack. This is the books I've read, right? And
Yeah.
Just keep adding to the stack all the time.
yeah.
That's so healthy though, because that talks about your passion and your dream for bringing original sources to the people. Because as of right now, it's all pictures and images. And so being able to have something that you can tangibly, there's a B in there. Thank you. Oh my goodness, that's an MS word stumble. Tangibly hang on to, because once you establish yourselves as credible to representing the original source appropriately, then people, they develop that trust in you. And I wish you the best. That is awesome.
Well,
we would love to fund you. Is there a place people can go to donate to your cause? or
because you know
do
the
those
Mormon
types of
church isn't
things.
going to do it right. They're not going to give you those references.
Which
They're not
is,
going to throw them out there for you.
Which is so weird.
Okay, wait. One of the hang on. This is kind of off topic.
Do the waits because that is how that's how we jive here at Unpacking.
Okay, because I still I just did a video about Oliver Cowdery, and the church will say, "Oh, he never denied his testimony." But in a church periodical, in the Times and Seasons, there's a poem that somebody wrote. It's on my TikTok, but he says that Oliver Cowdery did deny the Book of Mormon in a church newspaper. But they're not going to showcase that. The church isn't going to say,
Right.
"Oh, whoops, let's just they're going to tuck that away so no one sees it."
So much of the church's ability to maintain control over the members hinges on those kinds of things specifically. Like if you take away the witnesses to the Book of Mormon, holy crap.
There's a problem.
Right?
Yeah.
You suddenly now there's nobody to quote unquote verify that this
How long
existed.
did all the witnesses live?
So I've kind of broken down the 3. I haven't done David Whitmer yet, but then the 8 witnesses, I think 5 of them died pretty quickly after.
Like within 4 years.
Right, and then there's 3 that all
Right.
left the Mormon Church and joined another one that did use the Book of Mormon as a basis. So they're still gaining from holding that testimony of the
Right. They
gold
still
plate.
have
So
some notoriety for it.
was
yeah.
it?
yeah,
Was it cool? So Martin Harris, Oliver Cowdery, and who was the other
David
one?
Whitmer.
David Whitmer. So wasn't it Martin Harris that was loved to be a witness for original
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
scriptural
Yes.
work? Because the Mormon Church isn't going to showcase that he basically said the same thing about
Gladden Bishop or
all these
William
other
Cullen
churches stuff and saying, oh, this is as true as the Book of Mormon
Exactly.
is. And then we're like, okay, let's take that data, put them side by side. Hey, there's a lot of problems here.
Right.
Also,
Yeah, you're going to want that microphone in front of you, America, because that microphone's not picking you up.
Oh yeah. Well, there's just a whole bunch of stories like with Martin
She
Harris.
didn't want to
where-
be picked up. She wanted to be able to share. She was the prompt. She was the
You're-
prompt. She
you're the
didn't want
prompt.
to be picked up.
So, no,
I'm not here.
I have 4 microphones. All of my equipment is set up, and we plugged in a brand new microphone cord today. It's sitting right over there to go back to Sweetwater because it doesn't work. So, otherwise, you would be hearing all of the Holy Ghost America's words being whispered into Julia's ears. So yeah, when you want that mic, we believe in physical pushing and shoving a little bit. Just grab it. Yeah, and you're on wheelie chairs. So
Well, and that one spins, so all you got to do is spin it. So just get out of my way here. It's my turn.
love it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there's a story of Martin Harris who he says he talked with Jesus in the form of a deer.
Yes.
Jesus was a deer, and he walked with him for like 4 miles or something like that. Like
but wait, what did the devil look like?
the devil he had sleek hair. He had sleek black hair and had like a jackass. Like what? Why are we trusting this guy?
So a lot like Severus Snape then?
So it's Severus Snape, but with a jackass head. Like, imagine that.
Oh, wait a minute.
That's the devil.
So he was like a centaur, a backwards centaur?
Yes, with Snape hair.
So I
I
listened
would
to...
like to know what he is on because
Martin
that
Harris?
sounds like some heavy shit that
yeah.
he was
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well,
smoking something,
well,
So-
Joseph Smith's got some weird stories too, like toads and stuff.
Nice.
but not salamanders,
so I listened
right?
to...
Definitely not
Yeah,
salamanders.
definitely not salamanders. I listened to the 4-part series that you did with Ramiumtum's Ruminations,
Oh, yeah.
right, about No Man Knows My History. And then I listened to the reading of the pamphlet from, what's his face? I can't remember his name
Hugh
now.
Nibley.
Hugh Nibley, yeah.
I
And
read
then
that.
You
Hugh
wrote that?
Nib-
You read that,
She
okay.
read it, yeah.
Hugh
and then-
Nibley's a creepy dude.
And then I
Oh my
listened
gosh, it's
to
so weird.
You and I think it was Jen talked about that response. One of the things that really struck me is when you were reading that response from Hugh Nibley, he talks about how ex-Mormons want to use somebody's statement when it suits them, but not use the other statements. And my initial thought was, no, that's what you do.
That's
That's what
he does.
That's what Mormon apologists do, is because there's so much of like Martin Harris, David. Let's just look at the witnesses. There's so much that they said that did not really jive with their testimony of the Book of Mormon, but nobody ever talks about that. It doesn't come up ever because it would be damning evidence.
So I'm going to do a mental health plug-in here. There
Good,
is
because that's why we're here.
Right, that is what the podcast is about. But honestly, we've been talking for hours and just having a blast, just going in circles, so it's been a lot of fun. But what you're talking about, Mason, is something that we call the assumption of similarity. And I utilize the assumption of similarity in couples therapy because when one of the partners is saying, you're not listening, you're not doing this, you're cutting me off, you're interrupting, you're whatever, what we ask is, pause for a minute and look in yourself and evaluate. Am I doing the same things? Because it's very normal for us as human beings to project our shortcomings onto somebody else. But unless we're like, hey, I'm looking in a mirror and I'm the one doing this.
Well, that's really hard to do, too.
It is really hard to do. But that's why, again, so truth telling, that's why this is so important. Because if I'm able to look back at myself and go, oh, actually, it's Sarah that interrupts more often than Mason. And, you know, Mason,
Amen,
when
hallelujah.
it's so true. It's so bad. But if I'm able to identify that in myself, then I'm able to go, okay, let me back up a little bit. Let me reevaluate. How can I navigate this differently? And so if we were actually able to have access to the witnesses' crazy shit that they said, or Joseph Smith's weird stuff where we're all scratching our heads, rather than the glorified whitewashed version, then we would be able to make a more informed, I know John DeLynn talks about informed consent all the time. I would alter, you know, I agree with him on informed consent for sure. But I think that if we were able to be trusted to make our own decision about what the data means, then those who were members of the church would be more authentic with less mental health illness, because they are trusting their own internal sources of figuring things out and critical thinking versus somebody else saying, ooh, I can't trust you to think the way I need you to think if you know the truth.
Right.
Because
So I'm
that's
not
when we
giving
get
you that
into,
information.
right, I'm going to withhold information for the betterment of me is at its very bottom nature. It's undue influence because I'm expecting you to make major life choices, or like, let's say let's talk about an affair where I'm going to keep it a secret from you. I'm asking, you know, I'm looking at you, Mason. If I'm cheating on you and not telling you about it, then I am expecting you to perform and dedicate your life and make certain sacrifices under a false pretense where you don't have the opportunity to choose differently because information has been withheld from you. I saw you raise your hand, Julia. Go ahead.
I just got excited. The whole time you were talking.
There's no excitement in here, okay?
Yeah,
I'm gonna
we're
need you to
boring
keep that under
and
control.
dry.
Turn it down. But there's this book called Real Love. Have you read that one?
I have not.
So
Who's that by? I'm going to write this down.
I don't actually remember. I have mixed feelings about it, so I partly really like it and I partly don't like it. But
yeah, so we will go ahead since you're going to talk about it. We'll put it in the show notes, so we will find it.
Perfect.
And hey, Mace, can you turn on that fan? It's closer to you because it's getting stuffy in this room.
Told you that was going to
Back
happen.
button
That's
all
my
the
fault.
way.
I was cold when we started.
Oh, is it?
Push
It might not
harder,
be
I think.
plugged
No,
in.
it's plugged in.
It's not plugged in. All right, Mason will fix it. Go ahead,
Okay,
Julia.
so my marriage counselor recommended this to me when my ex-husband and I were going to, he was an LDS therapist, and he recommended, I think it was him, he recommended this book. And I read it, and a part of me really liked it, and part of me really didn't like it. I don't know. I have mixed feelings. But anyway, one of the main things is that if in order to feel unconditionally loved, you have to be totally honest about yourself. So if you withhold information about you and you don't share that, then you're not allowing them to love you unconditionally.
Okay, so it's Real Love, The Truth About Finding Unconditional Love and Fulfilling Relationships by Greg Baer, MD.
And I'd love it'd be nice if you read it and gave
I will.
a good
If
a
it's
good
on
analysis or whatever.
Audible, I will read it soon.
It is. That's how I listen to it.
Okay, good. So I have multiple sclerosis. I don't think that came up before. And so I have visual disturbances on a regular basis. So I consume most of my material audio because it doesn't stress out my ears. But I will absolutely do that and follow up on that. Mason will put that on my list. But what I agree with what you've said is, you know, when we're talking about self-love, I can't love myself unless I am... unless I am completely vulnerable with myself, but I also have to understand where my shortcomings are coming from. So like when I am working with somebody in the counseling field and we're exploring like childhood trauma, those waters are yours, so feel free to open and chug away. I know our listeners are like, they are in the room with us today. There's a fan going. We're going to, all kinds of things. So, squirrel. Anyway, but when I'm working with the client and I'm having them explore their childhood traumas and their experiences and the way they're raised, it's not with the intent to blame their parents or their upbringing for everything. But when you're in the angry phase, sometimes that's a little bit inevitable. But the overarching goal is to be able to take, during these developmental years, these things happened or did not happen, which is influencing the way that I function today. Now, what do I need to close that gap? It's not meant to blame our parents. It's meant to understand things. And usually what happens is the more that we understand about the ways our parents did not show up for us without that, oh, they're horrible people, the more we're able to understand why they were in struggle and what caused their inability to show up for us. So like for those who have read my book or for those that read my book, after this comes out, my book will be out.
It will be out.
It will be out.
Snatch it up.
Yes. In the epilogue, I talk about it's really hard to read these experiences and not just hate my dad. And I've definitely gone through my time of life where I hate him, but I also understand that my dad went through some significant childhood trauma himself that has left him struggling with severe insecurity and a lack of self-worth. And he is a man in struggle, and people who are hurting hurt people. And while I don't have a relationship with him anymore, I don't hate him. I get that he was probably doing what he felt was best. I think his best really sucked, and I can influence how that influences. I can recognize how that impacts my life and my functioning today. But I'm also not going to go hang out with my dad, because when I'm with my dad, I become a very ugly person. Like I revert to a younger, toxic Sarah. And so by understanding how that all connects, I'm able to understand when I start to fuck things up, that I'm doing the best I can. And then I have that unconditional positive regard for myself.
Yeah, and the only thing I was going to add there is that once you understand and really accept the fact that your dad was doing the best that he could do, you're going to have the ability to build a little more empathy. It doesn't mean you're going to jump into that relationship. Like you said, there's some relationships you're not going to be able to go back into
Empathy from a distance.
Right. But you can have more grace for that person because you can recognize, hey, they did the very best that they could do. It sucked. But it's not like, it would be different than if looking at your dad and saying, yeah, my dad totally had the tools to do that better and he just sucked. That would be completely different than recognizing he had his faults too. He did the best that he could with what he had. It was lousy, but I can at least appreciate that he was doing the best that he knew how to do. Right.
Well, because my dad could not get access to the tools because Spencer W. Kimball said going to counselors and psychiatric people was bad for you.
Right.
And so my dad just over the last few years.
Was that a big sigh over there?
America and Julia sighed together. It was a couple's sigh.
So sweet.
So,
the advice of the leaders has just been consistently bad. I don't know. But Julia, you didn't even finish your thought. What were you saying?
My thought was that so thinking on an individual level, people can't love you and you can't love yourself unless you're being honest about who you are. And so my thoughts were that can the church really have, it just makes me wonder, can the church really have true converts if they're withholding information about themselves, if the church is lying about who they are, if you look at them as a person?
Right.
And so I think about that a lot. Like, I think they're hurting themselves in a way. I mean, sure, they're having blind followers, so I guess that's not hurting themselves if they're getting tithing,
right?
Right.
Exactly. But like these members are missing out on a true relationship with the church because the church is not being honest about Joseph Smith's polygamy, about blacks in the priesthood, about anything. Like I don't finances, the tithing. Like
yeah.
It also negatively impacts their relationship with a higher power or a higher being who expects them to perform for love. So it's not just their relationship with the church. It's not just that they're not converted fully to the church because they don't know, but it also impacts and stifles it's what is the word I'm looking for? Stunts. There it is.
Yeah, stunts.
It stunts their spiritual growth and connection with a higher power because they cannot be loved unconditionally unless they fill in the blank.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we've talked about this. The church, the Mormon God has very conditional love. And what's really interesting, so when I started coming out of the church, I started seeing because I read this book and I started connecting
You
all
read
of that.
the Real Love
yeah,
book?
that was
Okay.
it was a big eye opener for me. She's right. There's some parts of it that I was like, what are you even talking about? But the unconditional love part was mind blowing to me. And when I would talk about it with some of my family members who are still LDS, they'd say, no, God is not unconditional. He is conditional. He expects you to follow through on these things. That's what we learn in church. You have to do these things step by step to get to heaven.
When I remember there was a talk or a fireside or something that Nelson gave where he made that very clear that God is a conditional lover and we have to do X, Y, and Z in order to achieve or earn that love. And I just think that's so gross.
Right. And that goes so against the psychology of healing, because what we're seeing over and over and over again in the research is unconditional positive regard, which is basically fancy lingo for unconditional love. I am going to see you as positively as I can without any judgment, and acceptance, which we call it radical acceptance because we've got to flower up the language, of course. So radical acceptance, unconditional positive regard, when those two things exist, people grow, people change, people heal. And then Brene Brown's work on shame and vulnerability and being able to be open in a safe environment, of course. I'm not talking about get out in public. Like, not everybody is going to be able to air their dirty laundry on a podcast the way that Mason and I air our dirty laundry on a podcast. And that's
It's really
okay.
more you airing our dirty laundry, by the way.
It is. I air his dirty laundry and my dirty laundry, with your permission. Anyway,
Well,
whatever.
women
Ignore
always do
him
the
over
laundry,
there.
so.
Oh, yes. In many,
Not in our house, not very much
patriarchal-
anymore.
Yeah, not
we
anymore.
split it pretty good, or
Mason
I
does
do
most of the
more
laundry
it, but-
right now, and he does it correctly. Y'all, I have trained him so good. Let me tell you. Just teasing his eyeballs. But that's what is required for healing from emotional wounds. And what a lot of people still fail to understand is it's those emotional wounds lead to physical ailments that lead to chronic disease.
But then you need the church. Like, so we're talking about truth
You
telling,
mean
right?
it makes them dependent on
right,
the church?
Right,
Yes.
it makes them dependent on the church,
Got
right?
it.
We're talking about truth telling, right? One of the reasons that the truth is not told is because then you're afraid you're going to lose control over the person that now has the truth. So if you tell someone all the dirty, ugly secrets of the church, you're going to lose people. There's no getting around it. Some people are going to walk away, maybe a lot of people, I don't know. Not any different really than those of us that are figuring it out on our own.
Now that we have
there
internet.
Right, but there would be a mass exodus. If you came out in general conference and said, and Russell M. Nelson gets up there and spends 50 minutes talking about all the down and dirty crap, there's going to be a lot of people that walk away or are not going to be able to handle it. And so you lose control over those people. But even the people that decide to stay, you lose control over them too, because now they're making a choice all on their own. Okay, now I know all of this stuff, but I'm going to choose to stay anyway because the church still does a lot for me that I want in my life, but they're not controlled, at least not as much, by the church anymore. And so the truth telling is all about allowing someone else the control over the information. Mm-hmm. When I have it, I own it. Like if I'm having an affair, when I have that information I don't share, I have control over that information. As soon as I tell you, I've lost control completely, right? I don't have any control over what you do with that information now, whether you decide to stay, go, murder me in my sleep. I don't have any control over that. That is all you now. And so that's the problem with truth telling as an organization. As soon as that information is out there, you've lost control over what people do with it.
But it sounds like what you're also saying is that without that truth, you cannot, you said growing and healing are not achieved unless is that kind of what you were saying? So
Absolutely.
So they have 17 million, I don't think they're all active, but they brag about having 17 million members who in what I think or what the evidence shows is that they are not growing and that they are not healing.
Right. Well, one of the things that's so fascinating to me is in my own clinic, there was almost always, hang on, let me rephrase that. Almost always in my very active Orthodox members, stagnation in their growth. There was a lack of flexible thinking. There was challenges in their ability to look at life differently. It was this like, I would hit this barrier of no, I can only see it from this way. Anything outside of that is dangerous and bad, which would mean then that their amygdala or their survival brain would get activated. And what I saw was, you're coming to me to be healed from anxiety and depression, but there is a lack of ability to address the underlying things that are causing
what's causing the problem,
the anxiety and depression. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
The world's most exciting podcast, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, New York Times best-selling author and National Radio Hall of Fame inductee, Michael Savage.
I'm Michael Savage, host of the Savage Nation podcast, home of borders, language, and culture. Be here or be nowhere. The Savage Nation podcast.
Catch the Michael Savage podcast on all podcast platforms every Tuesday and every Friday.
And then we have the correlation, which we've heard over and over and over again, that Utah, and we all end up picking on Utah. We should really be picking on Arizona and a lot of the whole Book of Mormon belt. I know John Dehlin calls it the Wasatch Front, but it's literally that whole section. I call it the
All
Book
the
of
way
Mormon
from
belt.
Idaho down to Mexico.
I actually would say
Yeah.
Eastern Washington, all the way down to the southern borders of New Mexico and Arizona. Absolutely. But there is a higher incidence of use of antidepressant medication and psychotropic medication altogether. And so, of course, there's no data that says Mormons use it more than everybody else. It is a correlative statistic.
Well, in a culture. That's a culture as well.
A culture. But one of the things that's really interesting is we see these pockets of the same phenomenon coming out in like highly concentrated evangelical Christianity, highly concentrated Jehovah Witness. Like we are seeing this in highly concentrated Scientology. I read about it in the book Nexium, what was her name? Her book Scarred. Who wrote the book Scarred? I cannot remember her name right now.
Do you need to know?
Yes, just for the listeners that are
It's
driving.
not Leah Remini. She's the only one I know.
No, it's not Leah Remini. It's the other one, and I think her name is Sarah. What is her name? All right. Anyway, Scarred Mason's going to chime in here with it in a minute. From the Nexium cult, who talks about that crippling toxic perfectionism, depression, and whatnot.
Edmondson?
Yes, Sarah Edmondson. Yes, thank you. Sarah Edmondson. Mace will put that in the show notes as well. Excellent book about the inside workings of the Nexium cult.
Total tangent here. If she says I'm finding it, you're not allowed to find it before me.
Oh, okay.
You do you. It's good. Just wanting to make sure.
Fastest thumbs in the West.
Look,
Oh, yeah.
I'm in a room with 3 women all by myself here, okay? I don't know if I can handle all of this. I'm getting a little
We support
emotional.
you, Mason.
You are a nurse anesthetist. You work with
Yes,
an
but when
abundance
I
of
get-
estrogen.
But when I get tired of people, I just tell them it's night time. Or I walk away. I can't do that today.
He's a nurse anesthetist, so he puts people to sleep for a living.
Oh.
Yeah. Or epidurals. So, Julia, what inspired you to travel this path of bringing the source material to life and providing the data so that people could have access to it.
And also actually say your website.
Yeah, and say your
I
website.
said it, analyzingmormonism.com.
Yeah, she said it because I wrote it down.
Thank you. I said it. Okay, so actually, my journey actually was, I feel like I've been walking this path even as an active member of the church. So my dad is part of this group. He's a big Rod Meldrum fan, big Wayne May fan.
He's the creepy guy that was it Kara that they did the Kara
it was
Burrell
so
that
hard.
did
It was
it.
a great episode.
But it wasn't because he was
was.
creepy. It was just because he would not. He
wouldn't
would
bend.
not. Right. He couldn't
He was very
hear
firm
the
in
facts
what he was-
and change anything.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, my dad and I were part of this group. We called ourselves the Mound Rovers, and we would go and explore these Indian Native American mounds, and we would go to these conferences all the time. The whole thing was just to try to prove that the Book of Mormon took place in the United States.
Right.
Period. So I wasn't interested in the geography as much. I was like, wherever the Book of Mormon took place, that's where it took place, whether it's
Right.
Mesoamerica or up in Michigan or wherever it was. So
It's going to be Africa soon. I'm just convinced. When we can't find it here,
it's gonna be Africa.
it's not going to be the Americas. It's going to be Africa's the promised land.
I trust the range down in Africa.
Just teasing.
But we had a website, and then my YouTube's still up. It's a Mound Rovers YouTube. There's 5 videos, and I think I did a pretty good job. But anyway, I was always looking for evidence, and so even then I was showing sources, original sources and things like that. And then I was reading Brian Hales and things, but he's very watered down. If you look at his books,
He's an anesthesiologist too, by the way. Brian Hales.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
You to sleep.
I don't know. Who was talking about him? The recently Mormonism
If you're going
Live
to tell jokes
did.
like that, you have to spin the microphone.
I'm
You
sorry.
got to give it for
my
everybody.
joke was because he put you to sleep with his books. That's it.
No, Mormonism Live just did a no good, very bad book review on Brian Hales
And Dan Vogel.
commenting on Dan Vogel's latest
Yeah.
book. It was hilarious, you guys.
I need to watch it.
I busted up through the whole thing. Things like Brian Hales had said something
And he hasn't even
about-
finished the book, right?
Right, he hadn't finished the book when he reviewed it, and then he was giving Dan Vogel a hard time for not covering the Book of Mormon, but the book itself was
It's
the title
massive.
of the book was after the Book of Mormon. The book wasn't covering the Book of Mormon time period, which is why it wasn't covered. But then Brian Hales is
Oh,
you
that's
need to
funny.
cover it.
How dare you
But it's
not talk about the Book of Mormon?
Right. I think I'm going to get the dates wrong. So Julia, correct me, or Mason, because you're also the history buff. The Book of Mormon was published in 1830? And I think the Dan Vogel's book was 1831 to 1834 or something. So it was a very,
Oh, gotcha.
in the title, specified time period. So the no good, very bad book review it's just hilarious because anybody who, but he was using big words, and I mean, it sounded like a very educated book review. He can write mostly well with a really
Hugh
long run.
Nibley-esque.
That's
It
what I
was
was
Hugh
gonna say. It sounds like a no,
Nibley-esque,
ma'am,
yes.
that's not history book. When I was
Yes.
reading that for the audiobook, she cut it all out, but I was swearing a lot.
I can't leave
She laughed a lot.
He's so sexist too. But anyway, where was I going with all this?
Yeah.
You were looking
Oh,
for
so Brian Hales.
evidence.
Yeah, so I was reading Brian Hale's books, and I remember on the website, it doesn't exist anymore, but the Mound Rovers website, I remember writing an essay about I did all this research about the Bible, about I was being an apologist for the angel that came to Joseph Smith with a flaming sword telling him to live polygamy. I was like, well, yeah, the angels with swords are all over the Bible. God sends angels all the time. And I was sticking up for this weird idea, but I was still doing it evidence-based because,
Right.
you can prove anything with the Bible. Anyway,
I
but
love
then
that.
You can buy anything in this world with money, too.
You can prove anything with the Bible. That's got you need to make a meme for that, Julia, because yeah, it's kind of creepy.
It is
It's
crazy.
really yeah.
We
I
are
love
all
it.
over the place today.
Mind
I'm
blown.
liking it, but
you know
wow.
what? This jives with my ADHD and the energy that I
know.
live with every day. Listeners, hold on, because this is amazing. This is Sarah is in heaven right now.
I'm not sure that Julia has ADHD, but she can go from topic to topic like you would not believe. And she can quote any movie from the 90s also, a second skill.
Wait, really? You're a movie
So-
quoter?
So I was on your
Squirrel.
introduction, Squirrel, again, right? On your introduction, when it was you and your sister and you, one of you broke into song. Who was it?
It's probably my sister.
It was probably
She
your
sings.
sister. Okay, I couldn't tell, but I do that all the time, and so
Oh,
I
it's
was
so
just
funny.
kind of curious.
The day that Mason proposed to me. It was the same day, right? We lived in Snowflake, Arizona, so the nearest temple to us at the time was the Mesa, Arizona temple, and it was right around a 3-hour drive. And we were struggling with infertility, so we didn't have any kids. And
you just said the day we got engaged. Let's clarify something.
Definitely
here.
didn't have any kids because we were not having sex. You're right.
Keep
I'm
the
mixing
story
stories.
together there.
Thank you, Mason. So we're driving down to the valley. That's what we call the Phoenix area. When you live up in the mountains in Arizona, you call the Mesa Phoenix area the valley. So we're driving down to the valley, and Mason starts, like, we hit Sholo. So we are 20 minutes into this drive, right? And he starts quoting the movie Aladdin, like Disney's original movie Aladdin. And he quoted that movie word for word, saying all of the songs all the way down to the temple, like the whole thing. And I still fucking married him. Like, what is the matter with me?
I don't think
I'm
there's
not
anything
kidding.
wrong with you. I think that is a green flag.
There you go, Mason. You've
This
got a
coming
green
from
flag.
the girl dating Julia, who like we have listened to. Have you seen the new Matilda or the new Little Mermaid? She listens to the soundtracks on repeat. We don't listen to any other music in our house.
No
That's
wonder.
the only ones.
No wonder our daughter Katie is pissed that I did not let her come and meet the lesbian ex-Mormon famous girl, because you guys would have connected. We'd have gotten nothing done. That is my daughter with Disney and Harry Potter.
Oh, yes. Yes. Harry
Yes.
Potter. What house are they?
She is Hufflepuff.
Hufflepuff. Nice.
We struggle with Harry Potter because we love it, but also
J.K. Rowling. Wait, we're not a fan of J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, my daughter Katie is having the same struggle. So Katie identifies, and she told me I could share it here, which is the only reason that's a new development. She is on the LGBT spectrum as well. I don't know, is it a spectrum? That's probably not the right word, but yeah, I'm just trying to figure out the right way. But she's still working that out on her own, and she's not just sure if she's going to go by they them either. She's still working on that as well right now, as to how things fit best for her. But yeah, she loves Harry Potter and is struggling because she feels
Yes, it's hard.
ostracized by
Yeah.
the woman who created a world that she finds so much comfort in.
it's so sad. It's
Did
heartbreaking.
you guys
really.
read like her whole statement that came out?
No.
So I will say this: J.K. Rowling was actually very respectful
She
in the
was.
comments that she made. She was not hateful towards the LGBT community at all.
or the trans community.
Or the trans
either.
community
She
at
was
all.
not
She wasn't hateful at all. She shared some very strong opinions, but she was completely respectful in the way that she did it. The media grabbed part of what she said
Yeah.
and then, of course, just threw it in the face of everybody. And so I can understand why people, particularly in your situation, would be hurt by that. But if you ever get the chance to just sit and read what she said, I think that you would come away with a different opinion, just for the record, because she made her statements and was not hateful. I think I said that already, but she was not hateful towards that community at all. She just obviously has different opinions than you do, but it wasn't a blast on the LGBTQ community at all.
Well, it's nice to hear.
That is
Yeah.
nice to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, the media
So it's still
sensationalized
okay
it
for you
quite
to
a bit.
like Harry Potter, but one of these days maybe get the chance to look that up and read, because it's a long statement what she says. It's not just a few lines or a couple paragraphs. It's a few pages of a statement that she made, explaining what she believes and why she believes it and blah blah blah.
That's good. I should go read that. Yeah, for sure.
All right, so anyway,
again, I
Brian
can't-
Hales.
Oh yeah, just right. Okay, yeah. So going back, so I wrote an essay about being apologist for this angel and polygamy, and anyway, so I started reading more books, because when you've exhausted all of your books, you read more. And then I read Todd Compton's book instead of Brian Hales, and Todd Compton is an active member
So
of
you're
the church.
talking about In Sacred Loneliness.
In Sacred Loneliness, yes,
I
correct.
love that book.
That-
it is hard,
It is hard,
but it is so well done.
Yes. And I
Yes.
don't think he's a trained historian, if I'm correct, if I'm not.
I think you're correct. I don't think he's a trained historian. I think it was just he wanted to hear from the women. It was, I think,
Yes.
I'm trying to remember, so I might get the details wrong. Please do not quote me on this, but I think it was he identified that the women's voices of polygamy were silenced, that all we had were the men.
Exactly.
And he wanted to give them a voice. And I think at one point, I'm going to get this wrong. I'm really cautious. But at one point he said that as he did the research, there were pieces that were just devastating to him. But I do believe he has chosen to stay an active member. I think
That's what my understanding is that he is an active member. So I feel good about giving that book to others. Anyway, hang on, I'm getting off topic. I feel really good about giving that book to others because I can say this is from an active member of the church who still believes it's true, and this is so you can hold space for both. The church can be true and polygamy can be awful, and you can hear these women's voices. But anyway, so at that point in my life, I was like, I'm still getting sources, and I was still an active member of the church. But then I'm like, wait a minute, the data is leading me somewhere else. It's not, I can't stick up for this guy anymore, this prophet character who is being a sexual predator and who's trafficking women and things like that. And so I think I've always been on this path of sources and actual facts and data. It's just that I wasn't drinking it enough or getting the right sources. I don't know how to say that. Because when you're a member of the church, you're like, RFM says you're in 6th grade. The whole time you're in the church, and then you graduate when you leave the church.
Right. Well, so for me, I use it more as I outgrew it. Like there was a time where that structure, that predictable structure of the community really helped me just grow. And it was, while you can become a good person without it, it was the structure that helped me empathize and serve and love. But then I got to a point in my life where I was ready to move forward in a way that they wouldn't support.
Right.
So for me, I outgrew it. RFM talks about graduating from 6th grade.
I would call it that probably at some point in time you developed a different hypothesis. So you had this question in mind, and so you were looking at research. But even so when I did my capstone for my doctorate program, you're focused on, in this case, gabapentin and how it helps abdominal surgery. Well, if you look at a research paper that doesn't talk about that, you don't read that research paper. Whether it's good or bad information doesn't matter. You set it aside because that's not part of what you're looking for. And then eventually, as you go through all this research, you start to recognize that there's a preponderance of research over here that is really kind of changing my hypothesis. It's not that it's not related at all. It's that if I take all this information, my hypothesis changes. No longer do I care as to whether or not the Book of Mormon was here or in Mesoamerica. Now you're starting to question, was the Book of Mormon, is it even historically accurate? Changes everything.
Well, I'm gonna shift what you've just said a little bit. It's not so much where was the Book of Mormon going. It's more along the lines of I'm recognizing that this prophet is somebody who I might have a hard time trusting because he was having some sexual predatory behaviors. Would a sexual predator be the person who would bring about the second most or the most important book of God? And the way that I would say, let's put that into the experiential thing for me. So one of the things that happened to us is the issues with racism in the church didn't really bother us. Well, of course it didn't. We're white and we grew up in a predominantly white community, so we weren't exposed to diversity. And then you joined the military and now we're exposed to diversity, but since we're no longer racist, everything is okay. And then we adopted a baby that was so our 19-year-old is biracial, but he doesn't look black. He's got caramel colored. He looks more Asian,
darker skin,
actually.
But he doesn't look black.
Yeah, he looks more Asian because his biological father was black and Asian and his biological mother was white. So he's more fair-skinned and he's got the almond-shaped eyes and whatnot. He's got some features of a black, his nose definitely to me looks like he's got a black man nose and the pouty lips. Just love it. He's incredibly good looking. I say that about my own son. But anyway, when we adopted our daughter Abigail, who is very black, and then I'm starting to hear these stories. Now I'm hearing them with a different lens. There's a new filter in my brain, and it's like, wait a minute. You want me to teach my daughter, this beautiful, innocent infant who's entered this life addicted to methadone, or not methadone, I'm sorry. That was our twins that was addicted to methadone. Addicted to marijuana and cocaine. You want me to take this beautiful, innocent baby and say, God gave you black skin because you were not very valiant in the pre-existence. What kind of hell is that? to instill that into a child, that God was disappointed with you, and so he punished you by giving you black skin to come to this earth life in, and he set you up to fail because he gave you a mama who was addicted to drugs. Oh, and you have autism. Oh, and you have Crohn's disease. All right, at this point, Sarah's in the brain space of God's an asshole if that is how he works. To be
Right,
that
I love you, but God
vindictive.
doesn't.
Right, to be that vindictive. I'm looking at this baby going, I love this baby more than God at this point. That is when racism became an issue for me,
Right.
was when it was in my home,
Because
impacting.
it became real.
Right, impacting. And
Right.
Abby is my rainbow adoption in the sense of we had lost our twins just over a year previous to her coming. She's the baby that came that healed my heart from that loss. She and I are like bond. Like that girl is my little shadow. She's like a lost puppy half the time.
Aww.
She's beautiful and she struggles because of the health things.
Snarky, just like you.
Oh my gosh, she is. She is my child. There's no doubt. She is sassy like her mama. But it's that I may not be looking to prove, or I might be looking to prove that the Book of Mormon has some sort of artifact evidence here, but when I discover that the prophet who wrote it is an icky human with a tendency to lie, all of a sudden my brain starts to go, what else did he lie about?
Right.
And that's where the Book of Mormon starts to fall prey to attack for so many people.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to think where to, because there's so many. As you were speaking, I'm like, my brain's everywhere. Did you have something you wanted
Hopefully
to
in
say?
a hopefully in a good way.
I wanted
Here you go.
to
There's a
to
pad.
interrupt you and
There's a
say
pen,
that
so you can write down the things that come up.
Yeah. I wanted to interrupt you and say that the God that we were raised to believe in is not a good parent. Like he does not treat his quote unquote children the way a good father would. And if he's supposed to be perfect, wouldn't he father perfectly? Like even
Right.
if his children have to go through these terrible things, why would he, I don't know, there's so many things, like
Well, and-
vindictively choose to hate against his LGBTQ ones or his
Or
black
kick 'em
ones.
out because they
or
made a bad
or
choice, or
the
yeah.
entire,
Well, and-
or more than half of them are female, but you guys are all less than.
If I know I'm going to wipe your memory, but I'm hoping that you recover in this earth life, why am I going to set you up behind everybody else? Why not say, you know what? You are less valiant in the pre-existence. I'm going to set you up in an environment that you have the best chance to succeed so that you can
And learn
make
and
it
do
back.
better. That's
Right.
what a loving parent would
Right,
do.
because my neurotypical kids, I trust them to get things in life on their own because they have that ability to. But my son with schizophrenia, we built him a house next to us so that we can hold his hand so he can be successful. Because if I send my son with schizophrenia out on his own, he's going to end up in prison. I know that. Not because he's a bad person, but because he can't do it differently because of his disability. So by us building him a house and making sure he gets his medicine and working him through those hard things and advocating for him when he can't, he has a better life all the time. That's a good parent. But God doesn't do that. The Mormon God
he
says...
does the opposite.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
I
almost
love
like
it.
you're saying that white people decided that white people were the best people.
What?
Oh my goodness.
That's nonsense.
I think you are the first person to have that. Yeah, mic drop.
his mic dropping, but not his actual mic.
Right? No, I think you're the first white person to have ever come up with that. You should write a book that will change society. What were you going to say, Julia?
Oh, no, I was just going to say the same thing. Like with your experience with your children, like me coming out as gay, I was reading these stories. I was reading all the LDS, pro-LDS LGBTQ books. And then I'm thinking like, I really feel for these people. Like this is hard. They're asking them to be celibate or to marry someone they're not attracted to and to make that work. And then like Carolyn Pearson, like with her, that whole experience is so heartbreaking. But like God is asking us to love unconditionally, right? We're supposed to forgive 70 times 7. We're supposed to just love everyone, accept everyone. Like the book, one of the books that changed me was Christofferson, That They May Be One. Tom Christofferson, the apostle's brother, the brother
of Todd. Yeah.
His book changed me because his parents, the parents that raised an apostle of the Lord, accepted their gay son and his partner of 20 plus years. They just treated him as his son-in-law. Like they put a whole family picture up on the wall, and like it was so good. And I was like, why is God asking us to be better parents and better people who are with a stronger ability to love than he can?
One of Mason's and my very first heated arguments in our marriage. So we were married. It would have been around Prop 8.
Let's talk about this. Yeah.
It would have been around Prop 8 time period. So when was that? When was Prop 8? What year?
15, I think.
Probably. Well, 15 was when gay marriage
that
became
was the
legal.
policy.
Yeah.
2000,
Probably like 12, 10, 8, maybe.
Okay,
I think it was 2008.
Okay, so we had been married a while. So Mason and I have very few heated arguments in our marriage, like maybe a handful of them. One was because he put my primary manual away wrong. We'd been married for like a year. And no, we were married less than 6 months. I was just PMSy that day, so I had a lot to apologize for. So that was, I'm throwing my pen. Hang on. So anyway, but one of our very first heated arguments that lasted more than just like a blip on the radar because of Sarah's PMS or Clomid, which Clomid makes you clomicidal.
It's awful.
It's clomicidal. That's what we call it, clomicidal. So anyway, that wasn't about that. Was about Prop 8 because I was like, look, who cares if they get married? They're not going to be getting married in the temple. So why are Mormons even worried about this? And we had this huge argument because Mason kept saying like the normal TBM thing of like, no, it's going to ruin the family. And I grew up, my uncle is gay. Two of my uncles are gay. My cousin is gay. My sister, I'm pretty certain is lesbian, but is still in the closet. It's a long story there. But like I grew up, my gay uncles are the ones that I felt the safest and most connected to. And they are still very good friends of mine today. And I was like, most gay people are not going to ask to get married in the temple because they don't want to be in a church that says that
hates them,
sinning and hates them. And so what's the big deal? Who cares? And Mason was going along the lines of, well, it's going to destroy marriage. And I remember looking at you and going, and I'm going to have to use the pseudonym from my book for the one that I talk about in my book. I was like, how has Uncle Dallas harmed us? Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
The mighty and resilient Merrimack River, carving through the communities of our great region. My name is Linda Lorden, proud president of Merrimack County Savings Bank. And like the river that serves as our namesake, we're a constant yet ever-changing presence. Because to us, it's bigger than banking. It's about powering communities and putting people first. It's about knowing where you came from and where you're going. That's Merrimack style. Visit us at themerrimack.com.
And that like shut Mason up because my Uncle Dallas, that's a pseudonym, and I'm sticking with that because I don't have his permission to use his real name. But my Uncle Dallas, when we got married, sent us a mixed tape of absolutely gorgeous love songs. I want to say there are 30 love songs on there. And Mason and I loved that tape so much. We played it all the time when we were driving places. It was just full of like love songs from like ancient to modern, and that
Ancient.
Uncle, yes, ancient,
Wow.
like there were some
Like from the
old
Dark Ages,
songs,
man.
like the
There was some
Dark
good
Ages.
stuff on there.
Yeah. So there, it was absolutely beautiful music. And subsequently, Uncle Dallas does a radio show, and he lives in LA and whatnot. So he loves music. He always has.
Can we
and
get
I
a
was like,
playlist?
you know what? I found that, Mason, you pulled out all those VHSs and that tape was in there. Do we still have it?
Mm-hmm.
I need to get, like I do, I need to make a playlist of that. I need to recreate that from Uncle Dallas. And then I need to send it back to Dallas because when I talked to him the other day, he did not remember that he had done that. Mm-hmm. But that was what stopped Mason's, that normal Mormon, let me repeat what I've been hearing at church because it has to be right because the prophet said so stuff. And I was like, how did Dallas hurt us? And it wasn't. Dallas was gracious to us. He loved us. He sent us this beautiful tape to celebrate our love for each other. And so, yeah, we do. We need to recreate that and send it back to him.
Well, because if you make it about
put that on my
if
to-do
you make
list.
it about the issue instead of about the people,
Yes.
it's really hard to get through and see the people.
And that's a key part of keeping people in the closet is if you don't know any gay people, then you're going to assume that gay people do fit that stereotype. Oh,
Right.
they're living that awful gay lifestyle. They're terrible. They're hurting children and yada, yada, yada. But as soon as you know one, well, hold on, that guy, he's one of my favorite people. Every gay guy that I have ever met, I instantly want them to be my best friend, and I have not succeeded
Same.
yet. So if you know any in the Springfield, I'm just kidding.
I do.
Sign me up. Just
Yep,
kidding.
absolutely.
But, and that had this a very similar thing happened to Julia and I, as we were both, what is it called? Where you assume that you're straight because that's just the way it is.
Heteronormativity.
Yeah.
Wait, say that again into the
compulsive
microphone.
heteronormativity. So we just assumed that we were straight because that's what everybody is. We don't know anybody who's not straight, and that's just how it is.
And to be righteous and loved by God,
Yeah.
you need to be
Married to a man.
So you are going to stop exploring and discovering who you are and what you like.
Well, I never bothered
and what you-
exploring who I was or
Right.
what I liked. That was not
Right.
That didn't
ever
matter.
something that was.
Well, the church says deny yourself and become more like Jesus, right? You're
Yeah.
So
supposed to
why
be
would you be exploring what you like? Like what I enjoyed was spending time with my family and learning to cook, and also like blah blah
I'm
blah
going
blah.
to be a mother and a stay-at-home mother forever and completely dependent
We've
on
talked
the
about
boy.
this. Yeah, we've talked about this.
It's the penis. It's all in the penis. You guys, I'm serious. The
what-
priesthood power is held by the penis.
We know
my
you
gosh.
have penis envy. It's nothing. There's, it's just the way it is.
Only when we're traveling long distances and I need to go to the
But
bathroom.
it exists. It exists.
It does
okay?
exist.
It's a real thing.
So this is a side tangent, and I don't know if this is an appropriate joke, but I'm
Oh,
gonna
go
tell it
ahead,
anyway.
squirrel. No,
So-
we rated ourselves
They
explicit.
say the fuck word.
You rated yourself
They say
explicit,
the fuck
and I'm
word
just here for
instead
the
of the F.
ride.
I love it. No, we
So-
actually went back in and changed our rating to explicit because we feel like there needs to be an unfiltered space for people to go, because our feedback from our listeners has literally been, Sarah, we love it when you drop the F-bomb and say it like it is. And I think I said the word penis like 8 times in a row on a previous episode, and one of our listeners, his name is Ian, he's sweet. Ian, I love you. I've known him for a long time, and his wife is not jealous that I say that, because Jill, I love you too. So they'll listen to this and have a good laugh. But he said, I was cracking up so hard about you using the word penis that many times. I had to go back and re-listen again just to hear the point you were making. So that is part of who we are. We John DeLynn can keep things clean because I know his audience is more
well, they're
for
transition-
everybody
yeah.
who's in and out. We are definitely more of a
An out.
transition on the out and healing. And one of the things that's so fascinating is swearing is healing. And there's
we
a
learned
whole
that, and then-
Netflix
now we
series
swear all
on
the time.
it. Yeah, fuck yeah.
Because when we left the church, we were still very churchy. We like very like clean cut, clean language. We didn't watch rated R movies for a long time, and it took her probably a year to try wine. It was a really long
See,
time.
and I was the opposite. I was in high school always trying to hold those words in.
Oh, yeah.
And so as soon
was
as I was
very
like, I'm
natural.
done, I was like, let it out. But even as so there's again, that assumption of similarity. And then I'll let you tell your very inappropriate joke. In session, you mirror some of the language back in order to build that. It's for the mirror neurons that are in your brain. And so I would cuss in session to be healing and help build that rapport with my clients. And then I would go home and be like, oh man, I gotta like zip it. And it was such a hard dynamic. And now that I'm just out, it's like, I don't even care anymore. I do
Poor
watch the
soul.
F word in my home most of the time, but I fail a lot.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we fail a lot.
Amen, hallelujah.
Julia's daughter still goes to church every other week, and she gets us in trouble for swearing.
So
sometimes.
one of my daughter's last Sundays in primary, this is the autistic one, she does not sit still in a chair. So they were letting her color on the chalkboard, and she drew a cat pooping and then wrote, church is so fucking boring. This is shitty.
Dang.
I mean, it was spelled wrong, But she got the
She bore
point
her testimony.
across. She bore her testimony
The whole primary.
to the whole primary. And then I had phone calls, and I was just like, this girl is not set up for normal church. Like, even in school, they pull her out of the classroom a lot so she can move. She learns by moving her whole body. So,
Okay, inappropriate joke.
all right, let's hear your
Sorry.
joke.
I was okay. So I'm sure you've heard that lesbians. So we're lesbians, and we had your cousin. Was it James? I don't know. He goes. He's not the most non-misogynistic. And so he says, so which one of you is the guy in the relationship? And I said, well, it's me. My balls are so big, I had to put them on my chest. That shut him up.
Yeah, completely inappropriate. Oh my gosh. Can we move on, please?
Yeah, we're going to have to edit that out. Not at all. Okay, so back to the story that we're going to get in 5-minute blips and 10-minute tangents. This is fantastic.
Yeah, sorry. So hang on, let me get back on track. So I started researching. I read Todd Compton's book. There was another one, Taylor Petrey, Tabernacles of Clay was a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
So Todd Compton's In Sacred Loneliness broke my opinion of Joseph and being a man of God and whatever.
Right.
And then Taylor Petrey's book made me question the current church leaders because he shows very well like how the church has always been changing their doctrine. Like oral sex was bad. It was like wrong. You couldn't even, or birth control. If you took birth control, you were not guaranteed salvation.
Right.
Like horrible things that like now it's like, oh yeah, sure. You can take birth control. Nobody cares.
Right.
Like, so
I think it says something like, family planning is between the husband, the wife, and the bishop.
The Lord. Or the Lord. I don't
For
think
a
the
little
bishop
while
should
it
be.
was the bishop.
You're right. Yes.
In general, that's the case for what happens in the bedroom now, too. In general, the leadership of the church doesn't talk about it. It's
I
like,
think they
it's
got
just,
pushback
it's
from
just
that
what
one.
what you do. So, yeah.
Right.
But
like,
that's just another testament to the fact that things
it changed.
change. Yeah.
Right. So anyway,
And
I was
they're
like,
always
oh,
behind the times instead
exactly.
of ahead of them. Yeah.
And so anyway, that hurt my testimony as far as like these people don't actually talk to God because God is unchanging. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever, but he's changing all the time.
Right.
So,
If birth control was bad then, it's bad now.
right. Or if polygamy was right then, it should be right now. Or like anything, like even LGBTQ, like in D. Michael Quinn's book, his 19th century study of homosexuality, he talks about how Joseph had a very different way of handling homosexuality in the early church, and very different than how they do it now. Like I've been excommunicated from the church because I'm dating a woman. Of course, I was still married at the time, so you could see it as either way. But anyway, so anyway, I still feel like I'm the same person. I still feel like I give myself the same way to studying the church. Like I've served a mission. I got my degree at BYU, Idaho. Like, I don't feel like I've changed much. It's just the hypothesis that has changed. Like, what I fight for or what I show with the data is very different than what I did before.
So is it your hypothesis that has changed or the discovery? What is it called? Your findings. There it is.
Oh, yes.
Your findings have changed.
Yes.
Because you proved your hypothesis as inaccurate.
Well, I think in this case, the reason I said it's a change of hypothesis is because what you were initially doing was investigating where the Book of Mormon took place.
That's true.
Now you've moved to a related subject, but a completely different hypothesis. Now it's not, where's the Book of Mormon? It's, is Joseph Smith someone I trust that could actually write something like the Book of Mormon? So in this case, I feel like it's the whole
dictate the Book of Mormon.
There was no translating
the whole
involved.
Hypothesis has
Emphasis
changed
on
because your whole focus of study is different.
Wait, what did you say?
She said emphasis on dick for dictate. Sorry, Mason. You are
I
definitely being
apologize. What you were
out.
saying was important.
I
I
completely agree.
And
but
ultimately, it
that's-
doesn't matter too much. But that's why I said your hypothesis changed, because in your search for verification of this hypothesis, you found something else that completely trumped your initial study.
Right.
I'm just throwing all that away, and now I'm focusing on this thing, and ultimately I'm going to find that this thing completely nullifies that thing. It doesn't
Exactly.
matter because, in my opinion now, the Book of Mormon didn't happen at all. So it's irrelevant. It's an irrelevant hypothesis now because of this other course of study that I'm doing.
Well, and I have, so I have a editor. Her name is Zuri Brown, and she is who gets my rough of the roughest drafts. I send them to her first, and then she tells me where they suck. Like, this is the relationship that we have. And she can live inside my head on certain things without any judgment. And then we create, I mean, something I'm very proud of, which is my book.
Right.
And she is still an active member of the church. Now, she has said many times, I hear about the church in Utah. I would never be able to do Utah church, but she's in the quote unquote mission field. So we met her in North Carolina because her husband and my husband were military, blah, 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 blah. And she's no longer there. She lives somewhere else now. And I won't say because they're very secret squirrel about where they live and whatnot. But one of the things that I love about her is that's a military term. Secret squirrel is a military thingy. So anyway, one of the things that she says is, I know that the Book of Mormon is not factually or historically true. It's allegory, just like the Bible. And there are stories in here that make my soul sing.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love
me
that too.
Yeah.
Because you can, if Mormonism is your community and it is where you feel that upliftment, that spiritual growth, well, then stay in the community. But it doesn't have to be that black and white. It can be, she talks about, like the story of Samuel the Lamanite, like having the courage to stand up and speak something that is valuable to you when everybody around you is cutting you down. She finds significance in that story. And if you're no longer fighting over, was this accurate? Is this factual? Is it true the way that Joseph Smith said it's true? Is it true the way Nelson says it's true? But just look at the message, then it becomes just as valuable to her as the Bible is to her. She also believes the Bible is allegory, which I would say from an academic study perspective, it is allegory. And there's going to be some creepy ass stories in there because you're talking about allegory from archaic times where people were a lot more barbaric than we are today.
Well, I can tell you from my experience, I grew up in Utah area and then moved to Florida to finish my degree. And the church is completely different there. Mm-hmm. And it was an amazing, refreshing experience. So
yeah, same for us.
I will give space for that.
Same for us. When Mason joined the military, we got to attend wards. And it was completely different. Like, it was normal for people to come in pants or shorts or tanks or mini skirts or tattooed or smelling like cigarettes. And we were just a family of people coming together to uplift one another. And then when we moved back here, so there's a lot of what do they call them? Like the end of timers here in Missouri, like the people who move here to be close to
Preppers
Adam
and things,
Ondiaman. And like, you go up to Independence, Missouri, you've got a little pocket of like intense Utah Mormon culture.
Yes.
There.
Well,
Yeah,
this is
very
the Garden
different.
of Eden here, so this is the place to be.
I would just like to
In
know
Jackson
if
County,
ticks.
Missouri.
I just would like to know if the ticks were here during the
They're
Garden
here
of Eden time.
because of Eve. She
Damn it.
ate an apple, and now we must be cursed.
And we have ticks.
She
everywhere.
ate a
Ticks and
fruit.
chiggers.
Okay, let's not
Ticks
argue
and
about what
chiggers.
kind of fruit it was.
Yep. We don't
Okay.
Yeah, have you not seen the temple video? Because that does not look like any damn apple I've ever seen.
I don't even know what kind of fruit. What's the one where they crack it open and there's like
Right.
this white?
Nobody knows because we don't want to have that argument, okay?
It's magic fruit, so it doesn't.
That's right.
They
It doesn't
should've-
exist anymore
It
because
was
that
a
tree
damn
doesn't exist anywhere else,
crab
okay?
apple. I want to see her eat a crab apple because
That's
it made
where the flaming
everybody
sword
crabby.
was, right there. Maybe
Wait,
Joseph
crab
Smith
apples
had
are
this
not
vision
delicious
when he
to
was
the
in
taste.
Missouri,
They
and he
are
was
not.
wandering around and he found the Garden of Eden, and that's why the flaming sword was there. He just misunderstood what that flaming sword meant.
So the angel's like, "Hey, get out of here!" And he's like, "What? You want me to marry a bunch of women? All right."
Okay.
So, oh my gosh, this is hilarious. I
By
love
the way,
this.
we've solved the problem of the Samuel the Lamanite thing. There was a meme on Facebook just the other day, and it was stormtroopers that were there. That's why nobody hit him.
Jeez.
Because they were the bad guys. Bad guys have
so
no.
funny.
And how do you know if you're a good guy or a bad guy? If you're a good guy, you can pass the military's marksmanship tests, and if you're a bad guy, you cannot. Yeah.
That means I'm a good guy.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Are you a good guy or are you a bad guy?
But I don't know. But have you seen the joke where it's like the stormtroopers and then the guys in the red shirts on Star Trek, who the stormtroopers miss, but the guys in red shirts die anyway?
I'm a good guy when I wear my glasses and a bad guy when I take them off.
Oh, so it's a very dramatic
Yes, it has to be a
change
very
when you
dramatic.
remove your glasses.
Yes. So like when I want to shoot my kids, I just take my glasses off and they're totally safe, but I can fire away.
So I'm going to pull us right back onto where we were.
Good for you, Mason.
Because the question I have for you is, so now you've kind of talked about what changed what you were looking for. What made you want to share it? What made you want to talk about it and give that information to more people? Because really, truth-telling really comes down to, we start with telling the truth to ourselves and then to our small group of people that matter to us. But then some of us have this mission or inspiration to then share it to the world, essentially. And I'd kind of like to know, what was your inspiration for that?
Julia went straight from telling it to herself to making a TikTok. It took about 2 weeks.
Wait, really? I should
Julia's like,
see
well,
my
wait.
timeline.
I need to look at
Because I think it's pretty close. Anyway, so I feel like I was already sharing the truth, although my audience was very small. Like I was on, had that website with my dad, and I had my YouTube, and my family was always like really impressed. They're like, oh my goodness, like I read. Sorry, this is really distracted, but like View of the Hebrews, I read that as an active member, and I looked through. I read the whole book and compared it to the Book of Mormon, and on my website now you can see how I compare it. And then the other one, Solomon Spaulding, his book, and I compared those two again. I don't think he plagiarized the books at all, even
Right,
as
I
an
remember
ex-Mormon.
hearing you say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case. I think it was. I like to. Sorry, I'm getting really off topic. So the Twilight books, like I read all those, and I met Stephanie and got them all signed. I'm sorry, I
am not, but you go.
I
you
have
do
a
your
different
thing.
feelings now, but
You're
as a
right.
teenager, I really enjoyed them. And one of the things I just think is interesting is that after her books came out, there were vampire books
was- yeah,
everywhere.
it was
I don't know if she
explosion of-
started it,
yeah.
but somebody started it, and there was an explosion.
In the zeitgeist.
But in Joseph Smith's day, the theory of these Native Americans and these ancient mounds and things like that, everyone was trying to figure out like the lost tribes, like View of the Hebrews. That's kind of what he's trying to do. Anyway, so
Right.
Joseph was just jumps on the bandwagon of this theory, and so it doesn't bother
Right,
me.
that's
where-
what it felt like to you.
Right,
Yeah.
but hang on. So yeah, I was already, even as a member of the church, I was already trying to have my voice be heard in the pro LDS space. And then when I left my marriage and I got into an apartment, my brother was like, "Hey, you're doing a lot of research. You should just get a TikTok." And I was like, "I don't even know how to do TikTok." But he was like, "Yeah, you should do it, and you can call it Analyzing Mormonism." And then I was like, kind of waited. I didn't really want to do it, but I think it was probably a month after I moved out that I started doing it. But at the beginning, it was more like me processing. So if you watch my old videos, it's mostly, I believe it's me just asking questions like, help me process this, help me understand this. And then later it's more like, I kind of changed from being like a student asking questions to being like, let
The
me
teacher.
teach you the things that I'm learning. So like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that I really, I pride myself on is taking these huge concepts or reading all these things, or like Todd Compton, like the wife's, it's dense. He's got a lot of information in there.
Right, you make it digestible for
Right.
the general public, because like Todd Compton's book, it took me months to get all the way through it. For one, it's a time commitment. For two, it is highly academic. It is not an entertaining book at all. So it's not like a novel that you sit down and read in a day. It is one of those things that you read a little bit and then you chew on it and then you come back to it and you chew on it.
Exactly.
And what you do is you take that and absolutely brilliantly like put it into that entertainment factor, short blips, so that the data is getting out there to the world. And like I said, when you make yourself credible, because like for me, somebody gave me the CES letter, right? We talked about that before the show. Somebody gave me the CES letter and I was like, okay, wow, this is really intense stuff. I followed the data. After I confirmed that the majority, like I could follow those sources to the source material, that raw, let me see the image, let me look, and is this consistent enough? You know, I'm applying that scientific study brain of mine to this. And I go, okay, you know what? I'm not going to have to follow every single one of these links anymore, because Jeremy Reynolds has demonstrated that he is trustworthy in accurately representing the raw data. And then I just got through the rest of it. And you do that. And I think as you've built that credibility, people are coming to you because they know Julia is going to be true to the data, whether or not. And you just said you don't believe that Joseph Smith plagiarized the Book of Mormon. I agree. I think it's more like a research review where I basically take everybody else's research and I put it into my own words and then I have to cite it. Joseph Smith did that. He just didn't cite it. And that's kind of how I look at it. It's like
it says the Book of Alma right there.
Duh. But so I would agree. It's not a straight up plagiarism, but you hear all the time. Even in the CES letter, it says plagiarism. It was very similar. He was restating somebody else's work, and he didn't give them credit for their work or their opinion on it. But that goes against what most Mormons will come out and say, or I'm sorry, most ex-Mos will come out and say Joseph Smith plagiarized a good portion of the Book of Mormon. The fact that you're like, yeah, I wouldn't call it plagiarism, and this is why, demonstrates that credibility, that you're not just group thinking through things.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I guess there's a few things where I think that the overall ex-Mormon community has a certain opinion about something, whereas I don't usually, a lot of things I don't agree with. Like, I'm going to say this, and if it's controversial, please tell me. I don't think Joseph Smith was a pedophile. I
No,
think
he was not.
Okay, see, that's on your...
right, well, and so do you want to hear my reason why?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to hear finish her statement, though.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, just because I think a pedophile is a very specific diagnosis, and I don't think Joseph Smith follows those. So Joseph Smith did marry underage girls. He was a sexual predator, I think 100%.
Agree.
But I don't think he was a pedophile. And just because women mature at different rates, the 16, 14...
14 might not be a woman yet, but they're not a child either.
Right. So so people will have that opinion, or the church, the modern church is a cult. I have mixed feelings about that. The early church, I think, was 100% a cult. It just behaves very differently than as it does now. But anyway, what were your thoughts on?
So on the cult thing, I would say the modern church is still a cult, diagnostically speaking, but it's not as harmful. Like when we look at it on a spectrum, I would say they are on the cult spectrum, but as far as being a harmful cult, they are much less harmful than, say, Heaven's Gate or Jonestown or Nexium or even Scientology. So when we look at the harm...
And that depends on how you fit into the Mormon church as well. Like, I never felt
It's
harmed
very
by the
true.
church.
Very true.
But I'm a white male who had no desire to live outside of the standards of the church, whereas other groups of people,
like
LGBTQ,
gay kids who suddenly
blacks,
realize the only way to have salvation is to be dead now before they make any sins, like commit any sins.
Right, exactly.
Right.
They're on a completely different spectrum, and the church is very harmful to them because they don't fall in line with the rules, quote unquote, that the church or God, quote unquote, have established for them. So and that's why I think that's why for me it's still a little questionable too, because my experience with the church is different. Other people who have had a different experience that may have led to thoughts of suicide or leads to now you're divorced because you had no other option because, hey, I'm not attracted to you anymore because I like girls, right? That's a completely different situation than someone like me who I walk away. Frankly, it hasn't hurt me very much at all to walk away, and it didn't hurt me at all to stay until she left. Because then now we're trying to navigate, how do I still be involved in this church while she doesn't even want to be a part of it anymore, and we've got children and stuff. It didn't really start to hurt me until something changed to the point where it wasn't just a simple, hey, let's go to church, let's participate, let's do what we're supposed to do, quote unquote.
Right. And just to kind of close up this, like the cult thing, because we just did our summer cult series, and I think that we did a pretty good job, and that Luna Lindsay Corbden did a great job of demonstrating that from like a quote unquote diagnostic perspective, the modern day church still fits the diagnostic criteria for a cult, but there's a spectrum there. So just like if everybody in this room, so there's four of us in here, if we all have anxiety, one of us might have anxiety to the point of extreme, consistent, and frequent panic disorder, where we are having panic attacks all the time. We feel like we're going to have a heart attack. Doctors are giving us benzos because they don't know what else to do in order for us to get through a day of functioning. One of us might have very mild autism where they don't take medications. One of us might have autism that with medications we're able to function. And one of us might, not autism, I'm sorry, anxiety. If I said autism before, just insert anxiety over everywhere I said autism. Anxiety. One of us might have it to the point where it's so extreme that we are presenting with OCD, because obsessive compulsive disorder is extreme anxiety. So where does Mormonism fall on the harm side of the cult is going to be very personalized. Like for me, it was more harmful. But one of the reasons it was more harmful for me is because my personality disordered parents twisted and utilized Mormon church teachings, doctrines, and culture to punish me. And so when there are certain toxic things that happen in the Mormon church under that undue influence as a cult, I feel it more acutely and more intensely than Mason, who has not had that experience. So there's definitely a spectrum there, in my opinion. As far as going back to the pedophile and sexual predator, my understanding of the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, and the way that I would diagnose pedophilia versus predatory behaviors is that cognitively speaking, there are protectors. A neurotypical person is not going to be sexually aroused by a human prior to sexual development and maturity. There are protective things, like even when you look at like criminals, there's a reason in the jail system we have to separate the sexual perpetrators from all the other criminals, because sexual perpetrators in the prison system are going to be raped, beat up, killed by all these other prisoners, because these other criminals still have that neurology to protect our young and our innocent.
They're just doing their part to teach empathy.
Right. Very true. So that's a little unhealthy way to do it, but yes. So when we talk about pedophilia, we are talking about a disease process where that protective nature of our young is missing. It would be very abnormal for a fully mature male to be sexually aroused by a 6-year-old. And so that's where, if you are being aroused and struggling with, you know, arousal and wanting to engage, and we probably should have said trigger warning. We need to, hey, Alex, make sure that we do a trigger warning at the beginning of this one, because we do diagnose this. He'll put it at the beginning. We're good now. Thanks, Alex. I talk to the producer while we go all the time, and he's like, okay, yeah, great. And so anyway, when we're talking about pedophilia, we're talking about arousal and sexual action against children prior to sexual maturity. Then we have to look at cognitive development, because a 14-year-old or some 12-year-olds and whatnot are going to be physically, like, they're going to have breasts, they're going to have hips, men are, you know, the boys are going to be getting erections, blah, 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 blah. But now we have an underdeveloped frontal cortex. And so where we see the predatory behavior is, I recognize that you are too young to consent, but I pursue anyway. And I feel that that is where Joseph Smith was. I do not feel that Joseph Smith was a pedophile. Not at all. He was going after girls who were, we're going to say, at the age of sexual maturity. It is not, and this is where a lot of people get really mad, it is not abnormal for a male or a woman of any age to look at a younger counterpart that has reached sexual maturity and to recognize parts of their body or whatever that sexually arouses them. That is part of our DNA. That's part of our biology to continue to produce future humans.
Oh, it's part of our society too.
Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
The world's most exciting podcast, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, New York Times best-selling author and National Radio Hall of Fame inductee, Michael Savage.
I'm Michael Savage, host of the Savage Nation podcast, home of borders, language, and culture. Be here or be nowhere. The Savage Nation podcast.
Catch the Michael Savage podcast on all podcast platforms every Tuesday and every Friday.
Like if you look at, so as a man, if you look at models or advertisements or anything like that, they all essentially look like a teenager, because everything is exactly where it would be with a teenager, right? There's no flabby bellies, there's no drooping breasts, there's none of that stuff.
Right, but there's a reason.
Or body hair.
Or right. There's none of that stuff. So you're essentially looking at an adult child or an adult teenager.
Right.
And so if that's what you're trained to be aroused by society, then when it comes walking right in front of you, there's no thought that that's a 13, 14-year-old kid. Your body still responds.
Right. So a sexual predator is going to be on the spectrum of soliciting sex either without consent or from somebody who is too young to give consent. So all pedophilia, everybody with pedophilia who acts on it is also a sexual predator, but not all sexual predators are pedophiles.
So Joseph Smith, a lot of the times, the reason that he acted as a predator is because he had power that these young girls did not have, and he could pressure them very easily into doing what he wanted. Sometimes he got their permission from their parents or yada, 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 but a lot of times like asking for permission from, if God asked you for permission, like, is that actually you giving permission? Because he's God.
Right.
You can't say no to God. Neither could these young women say no to Joseph Smith.
Well, and
if I hold your salvation in my hands, the power differential really, if it doesn't negate consent completely, it certainly makes it more complicated.
Yes, exactly.
Right, well, and you have to recognize that at 14, your frontal cortex is not fully formed. So no matter, and this is like very few 14-year-olds. I'm sure there are some that maybe developed more rapidly, like we see anomalies all the time, but the vast majority of 14-year-olds are not going to have a fully formed frontal cortex. I think like the earliest we start seeing fully formed frontal cortexes is like 16, 17-year-olds, but usually for females, 18 to 20 is when that finishes out. And for our males, it's more like 21 to 23 when their frontal cortex fills out. And so a 14-year-old truly cannot give consent because they do not have the brain ability to truly understand what they are consenting to. And so one of the things that really gets me is that a 14-year-old is still, from your brain space, wired to respond and comply to authority figures that they trust. So yes, you can see some rebellion against your parents at 14. Yes, you're definitely going to see some moodiness and some sass and, oh my goodness, we just survived that with one of our daughters and the next one's coming up to get there. You said your daughter's 7. You just wait. It'll be a fun thing. But yes, predatory behaviors push consent and they push the cognitive development for somebody to be able to truly give consent. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I think that so truth-telling, let's give you the data so that you can understand this differently. Joseph Smith was nasty, but let's use the right vocabulary words, because when I go to somebody who believes in Mormonism and I say Joseph Smith was a pedophile, their brain automatically shuts off. No, he wasn't. Was he a sexual predator? Well, now let me give you some data that demonstrates that he was definitely pushing the boundaries of true consent. I would say even 18-year-olds, depending on brain development, and usually you have to know somebody really well to see, because I've had some clients that are 16, 17, that are like, I'm talking to a 40-year-old. The insight is amazing. If I was to stick them in an MRI, maybe their frontal cortex is done developing.
Well, and there again,
we don't know.
Power differential, right?
Right, and then there was a power differential.
You cannot overstate
correct.
the power differential that existed in that situation, or in Brigham Young's situation, or even President Nelson's situation, right? There's a
Brigham
huge
Young
power
had
differential.
way too much power.
Didn't Brigham Young have a 12-year-old wife?
Oh, he did. He had, and we don't even know how many wives he had. He had more than 50. And back to Annalisa Young, she thought she was the 19th wife. That's why she calls her book The Wife Number 19. But
Pretty sure she was like 53 or 53. I think she was one of the later wives. And he had like 56.
And he would literally just marry women to just take control of their property because he could.
The generally accepted number is 56.
Oh, okay. So
So,
it's 58 kids, though, right?
57, I think.
Oh,
but
57.
yeah,
Right,
close.
56 wives.
Oh, one was
57.
adopted. I think I was counting an
Okay.
adopted child.
Okay.
Yeah, 57. And I absolutely loved like the data that you guys brought out, because I already knew this, but you brought it out on your Mormon Stories episode, that polygamy does not actually mean more children.
So what is God thinking?
Right.
Right.
It's just more kids for one man.
Yes.
That's
God
it.
was thinking, I'm a man. I want this too, right?
Well, and we compare it to how many, because if you compare the Joseph Smith and Brigham Young statistics to today's couples, more children in that family unit, because today most people are only having 2.5 kids. So
2 to 4 probably.
not Brigham Young's, but like Heber C. Kimball and Parley P. Pratt's average number of children per spouse was like 4.5. I think like Parley P. Pratt was 4.5. I just wrote this in my
Right, but
Unpacking Mormonism book.
like a couple generations ago when they were telling
the
them that
average was 7 to 8.
My
children.
grandparents had 12. My mom, well, we had a mixed family, but it was 16 and 17.
Right.
And her family has 8, and they're like tons of kids. Just tell them to have kids. You don't have to marry, like have a bunch of wives. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, tell Henry Jacobs and Zina to have 7 kids.
Instead of stealing Zina away and sending Henry Jacobs on how many missions? Like 8 friggin' missions, and they were in love with each other. There was no reason for him to marry Zina Jacobs. She was pregnant. I'm sorry, she makes me angry.
Her story makes you angry.
Yes.
Right.
No, I agree. Because when I'm like, okay, let's compare the average number, and it was 7 to 8 living live births per monogamous heterosexual couple in the early 1800s.
And I
So,
think
Yeah.
I think that's part of why we're doing this whole truth-telling series, right? Is that if you grow up in the church and you're taught, well, polygamy existed because there were just more women and they needed to be taken care of.
There was a lot of widows.
There was a lot of widows, yeah. Or, you know, the Lord needed to raise up seed to build the kingdom, right? Okay, fine. All those, you know, we all kind of swallow that. Like, okay, fine. I guess I can see that. Because if that were true, if there were just a lot more women that really needed to be taken care of, okay, fine. Maybe I can get behind this for a time period. But then you look at the research and the data and you're like, but that wasn't true. Or you look at the fact that Brigham Young didn't actually take care of his families,
He didn't take
right?
care of him, and it was not just women who needed help. There was so few women available. Who was it?
Orange White.
Yeah, Orange White.
Yeah, there's I don't know, the Flora Woodworth. She was married to Joseph and she was 16, 17, I think. But she didn't want to be married to Joseph because he's married and to other women.
Ew.
And she's this young teenage girl and she wants to date these other guys. So she started dating this man named Orange White, which is interesting. But anyway, Orange had come into Nauvoo and he was like, I need to find a wife fast because I know that these men are polygamous and I have to pick one up fast. And so he sees Flora and he starts dating her. And then Joseph picks them up in a carriage and he's like, this is not okay. And he drops them off at her parents' house after a really long carriage ride. And Flora's mom takes Orange into a different room and she was like, no, this woman is Joseph's wife. And he was like, what the heck? Why are you leading me on? I didn't know you were Joseph's wife. Anyway, so like he's even saying he's noticing that these women are being picked up really fast.
Right.
And that's in Nauvoo. That's even before Brigham Young.
During all the secrecy
Yeah, that was when it was secret because Brigham Young said that every man needed to have multiple wives. So then they started trafficking women from all over the world because everybody needs to have minimum of 3 wives.
Right.
And that.
It was 3 to get exaltation, right?
Yeah.
Right, and so that's the truth telling. Right now, you look at this thing because, I mean, everybody's experience is different, but essentially my experience with polygamy in today's society is you kind of acknowledge that it happened and then you just turn the other way.
You turn it off.
And
You turn off your brain.
Pretend like, or be grateful that we don't have to live it now, right? We'll deal with that later when God puts us all straight or whatever. But that's obfuscating all the ugly that went along with it. And if you recognize, because now if you're looking at polygamy, it's not just about the ugliness of polygamy, but now you can move to, well, how were women treated in the church? And now you
Like
can look
cattle.
at, right, you can look at those kind of things. And of course, everybody's going to have a different opinion about that. And there are some people who had a relatively positive thing to say about polygamy, but most people didn't. And of course, those that did, I don't imagine that they would have chosen that if they felt they had the choice.
One of the biggest proponents, who was a woman, was Eliza R. Snow.
Eliza R. Snow, yeah.
And this is not provable, but I have a theory that she was lesbian because she just seems like one. But like, it would make sense for her to be happy in that situation. She's technically taken care of. She has all the space and time to develop all the skills that she has because she's super smart. She's a great writer, but she is not bogged down by a husband asking her for her attention because her husband is married to 50 other people.
Anthony of the Mormon Church.
Well, she's very talented and very smart, but she's a little misled.
This makes me laugh because of the video, Mason, that you were talking to Julia about with the Dallin Oaks. And the single parenting and the kids are they're going to struggle. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that that's the same for gay and lesbian couples as well. And, Mason was talking about that doesn't even make sense from a research statistic or a research standpoint. But then when you live in polygamy, you've got single parents.
All over the place.
All over the place. You've got all these moms taking care of their kids without a male counterpart. But if you're in a polygamous marriage, then the idea is that now there's 2 women or 3 or 5 women helping to take care of all these families, and somehow that's okay. Where
they
is
don't
Dallin?
need
It doesn't
the male
make
influence
sense.
apparently because he doesn't come around but once a year, and like he also doesn't help with raising the children at all. All he is like an authority figure. So is that all they need is an authority figure? Because like we can get that from like the local bishop, right? So just let them be gay.
Well,
Right.
and Eliza R. Snow is very much like the Sherry Dew of her generation.
Mm-hmm.
She had authority more than most women in the church. And I'm looking this up to verify, but I seem to remember reading that she was one of the women that was raped during the Far West ordeal.
I have heard that, yeah, in Missouri.
And raped so hard that her uterus was basically destroyed, so she couldn't have children. And of course, that's going to have an impact on your life as well. But you can't discount her story by any stretch of the imagination, but her situation was a little different than a lot of people, than the Partridge Sisters
And she was
or
very well
Violet,
off as well.
or not Violet.
I'm sorry,
but
what did you say?
Kimball's,
Oh, Eliza R. Snow, she was quite well off actually compared to
right?
Yeah.
Helen Mar Kimball, yeah, and yeah, she was
Eliza
able
R.
to
Snow
take care of
was.
herself and was financially stable. All of those things make a different experience.
different level of privilege.
Same as me growing up as the white privileged. I had the priesthood. None of that stuff ever affected me, and the faithful black member in Ghana that can't go to the temple because they can't have the priesthood, that kind of thing. The situation is completely different, and until I step into their shoes, I don't understand that. And so Eliza Snow's story is going to be much different than Helen Mar Kimball's story. And they're both incredibly important for us to understand what was going on, but they're also going to be significantly different because of their circumstances.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Julia, I have a question for you as we get ready to close out because, hey, Mace, we're at almost 2 hours now. But I didn't tell you that earlier because, I didn't want you to be like,
I noticed that you didn't be putting up your hands this time, like how long we've been going. I noticed.
Mostly because the conversation has been so enriching. Like, I feel that we have done a really good job today of demonstrating, drawing those lines between the data and what it actually means, that critical thinking skill of, hey, did you think about this? And so I definitely, when we're closing out, want to talk about utilizing that moving forward, not only with things to do with exiting Mormonism, staying in Mormonism, or faith transition, anything,
or any
but
other religion.
I want you to be
yeah.
able to use this skill in all of your life. But my question for you, Julia, is what impact has verbalizing this historical data and speaking truth publicly had on your own mental health?
On me?
Yeah.
So
and America, same question for you, because I know that you guys are doing this as a team, very different roles. But I'd love to hear from both of you on
so
that.
maybe I can answer that in two different ways, because in some ways it's very freeing. It's very like, I wish my TikTok existed when I was in the church. Like, I would have ate that up and I was like, oh my gosh,
Right.
I have not been given all this information. So like, it's been really healing for me, because I'm like, it is validating to make a choice and to feel backed up and supported in that choice. Like, I did leave the church. I didn't leave it because I was gay. I would have stayed active in the church. I would have made it work somehow if I had felt that it was true, but I've come to a different conclusion. So anyway, it's very healing. It's very freeing. Although at the same time, having the TikTok can be really hard at times, and you've seen this. People can be really, really mean.
Oh, yes.
And
sure.
they're harsh. Like I don't mind if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I don't agree with your source," or "Hey, you're reading it wrong," or whatever.
Right.
Like, that's
Right.
fine. Like,
I
sure.
have a different interpretation than
Right,
you.
exactly.
Right.
That does bother me, because I want to. I like it. It gives me energy, though. I'm like, I gotta go look for this thing. I gotta go find this, and that's all I can think about for days.
For me, when I get that, it's like, ooh, let me go check and make sure if
Yes.
I'm still coming to the same conclusion after I consider this.
Right. And
But-
I find that exciting. But yeah, but when people come at me and they're just so mean, like, I've had family come at me, like attack me. And I've had my old boss, who was also my bishop, came and attacked me. And I was like, hey, dude, I just don't agree with the churches hiding these billions of dollars and having shell companies and not filing these
Right.
reports.
Knowingly not filing these
for
reports.
20 years.
For 20
whatever.
years, right.
Like, so yes, it's healing. Also, I get really hurt, and I have to just get off of TikTok for a couple days and process things.
And to go along with that, she is a very tender-hearted person. So when she started this, I was like, this is not going to be good. She's going to her heart broken every other day. But our
Exposure
sister
therapy.
Yeah. Well, and our sister says, hell hath no fury, because that's what it feels like. Because she's like, you didn't tell me the truth, so I'm going to expose it.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I am right there with you on that.
You mentioned earlier that, if you look back at your earlier TikTok stuff, it's almost like you're kind of processing this at the same time. And there's positive and negatives to that. I feel like that's the case for a lot of stuff. If you look back at Bill Reel, when he first started podcasting, he was still an active Mormon bishop, right? He was trying to
make
figure
it
this
work.
stuff out and make it work. And then you can kind of see the progression. Of course, he does not act like an active Mormon bishop anymore, right? He has definitely transitioned to a different place in his life. And it's very valuable for us as the people doing it and for people listening to see that process. But it's also very painful because, like you mentioned before, Brene Brown talks about, being vulnerable with the people that you can trust. Well, with TikTok, you've given up that ability.
Right, you can't.
Right, you're not being
you cannot
vulnerable.
filter your audience
right,
anymore.
with the people that you can trust. You're being vulnerable, and the world is out there ready to respond, and that can be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was much harder at the beginning when I was still processing. I feel more confident in myself now, and people have said to me, "You're so brave," and for doing all this, but it doesn't really feel brave to me, because if I stick the facts are speaking for me. I don't know how to
Right. The
explain it.
facts are your shield. It
Yeah,
is look, here are my facts. You can attack me, but it's not me you're mad at.
Right.
Really, you're projecting your anger that you didn't know this already, but it's not safe to target the prophet. It's not safe to target Joseph Smith yet. If I'm still in targeting the prophet, targeting Joseph Smith, targeting my leaders is a sin, but I'm angry about this data and you're speaking up. So bam, I'm going to hit you with it. I don't call it brave. I'm going to hold up my arm. I call it courageous. Aww. And that is why I got this lovely tat.
I love
because
that.
when I wrote my book, it was the same thing. People were like, "You're so brave for sharing this," and I was like, "This isn't brave. It's different. I get why you say brave, but it's not. The truth is my shield. one of the scriptures I believe in is the truth will set you free. And like you, I've experienced this liberating because I'm telling the truth. I don't have to perform all of these mental gymnastics anymore. I have more energy because I'm now speaking the truth. But it does take courage to stand up there and say, I'm going to hold this shield of truth in front of me. Is the shield of truth, is that actually a armor of God thing? Okay, I'm good. I'm changing
the shield
it.
is a sword of truth. The sword.
Well, I'm changing scripture.
Because truth is the only weapon that is allowed.
And I don't. Right.
And the wicked taketh the truth to be hard, so it can't be a shield. It has to be
great.
something that'll hurt you.
So Sarah's going to rewrite the scripture and say it's a shield of truth, because truly, truth is protective. Yeah. If I am telling the truth and I've got the tangible data
it's the
to
sword of
back
the Spirit. I'm like all messed up. It's the sword of the Spirit. It's the helmet.
But in the seminary song, it's the sword of truth, right?
No, there's something else that is truth. Loins girt about with truth, I think, but it's the Spirit, the sword of the Spirit.
That is where I would wear my truth too.
Yeah.
Especially if it's tight.
My question for you
fitting
is,
or buzzes or something.
Have you read Brene Brown's book? I thought it was just me, but it's not.
No.
So her first book that she published, and where she really goes deep into what shame is and especially how it affects women. So it was very much targeted towards women in general, because that's where most of her research was.
At that point.
She talks about... Yeah, at that point. But she talks about, and I can't remember the word, because now you said courage. It was either faith, or it was either brave or courage. But she talks about the origin of the word. So our society has turned it into a heroic thing, Herculean efforts kind of things. But the word itself initially simply meant speaking from the heart. Aww. Like the origin of the word comes from the Greek or Latin for heart. I think it's Cora, which is courage. So I think it was courage that she's talking about, because Cora is heart. But she talks about, because she's talking about vulnerability, and that's how you dispel shame. Vulnerability, the courage really is about speaking from the heart, speaking your truth, who you are. And so you can call it not very brave because the truth is just there, but the truth has always just been there. It takes courage and bravery and courageous voices to put it out there. So, yeah, that's exactly, I think, the definition of courage, because you're taking something that is not widely known, but is truth and has a dramatic impact upon what people believe, both in positive and negatives. Like you just mentioned, some people saying, I love that you're putting this out there, and other people saying, if I was next to you, I would kill you, kind of a thing, right? I had a cousin that told me that on Facebook. He said, if you were right here, I would put you in the hospital because of what you're saying. When you still persist in sharing that story, that's courage, because you are telling your truth, whether or not you're right is actually irrelevant. You're telling your truth in what you have found through your own research, and to share it the way that you're sharing it is courageous. I don't think there's a better way to describe what's going on.
I'm going to disagree with you, because I think
of course you are, because that was a dramatic and very well stated. Yeah, just go ahead with your crap.
So let me dash it to pieces. No, the only part I disagree with is your truth or the truth is irrelevant. I disagree. I think where, Julia, your work is so powerful is that you're sharing objective truth. You are supporting your belief system with objective fact.
I mean,
as much as we can
Yeah.
have it
Yes.
today. And it is, hey, Mormon Church, and hey, any organization out there that's hiding this. If you are not part of Mormonism or exiting Mormonism, go in and check the data. And if it's not your thing, if you are not a lover of researching historical data, I get that. I'm a neuroscience geek. Don't ask me. I'm going to definitely go somewhere where I feel that what I'm getting is credible. And I think the challenge for so many people is recognizing that the Mormon Church is not credible because they pick and choose what they are going to share. So I don't think whether it's your truth or real truth, that's irrelevant. I would say it's very relevant.
I don't think it's relevant to the courage that it takes to share it. I think it simply strengthens your position. If it's not well researched, well, then you're standing on a inner tube on the water. But when it is well researched, you're standing on a yacht on the water, right? Your stability changes, but the courage is still there. I think that's really what I was trying to get to when I said whether or not what you're speaking is true. So let's say we're all wrong. Let's say Mormonism actually is true, and we just have all screwed up the facts. It still takes a tremendous amount of courage to share what you feel like you have discovered. So if, a year down the road, you discover something else, and now your trajectory changes completely again, and now I'm back in Mormonism, it still takes courage to share the message. And so that's what I mean by whether or not what you believe is accurate is irrelevant. It's because you have found what you believe is truth, and you're sharing it in such a way that opens you up for incredible amounts of, let's just say, attention, both good and bad. But of course, there's the harmful attention that would seek to silence your voice.
Right.
And when someone seeks to silence your voice, and yet you still persist in sharing, you still persist in speaking, that's courage at its root. That's courage at what the word originally meant, and the way that Brené Brown describes it in her book. That's real courage.
Yeah. I love the work of Brené Brown. Was there anything else you wanted to say about your mental health, how this has impacted your mental
Did
health?
you have anything to say? To answer that question?
How this has impacted my mental health. So I would say it's impacted my mental health immensely because I was raised in the church, and I still believed in it. I don't know. Even outside of the church, I was like out of the church, physically in the church, out, physically in, mentally out for like, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years. And then even when I stopped going to church and was like, I'm done with this, I don't believe it anymore, I still kind of believed in it, right? Mm-hmm. Because I still believed that Joseph Smith was still a good person. And I remember Julia told me that he, the rock in the hat thing, and I was like, no, that's nonsense. That's ex-Mormon lies. And I was like, wait, I'm an ex-Mormon. Hold on.
Mason said that too.
Didn't tell me you didn't tell her that the Mormon site had been hacked.
Did you say that?
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
He did. He said that. He was like, the Mormon was, I was like, well, then it's been hacked since like 2013. They haven't fixed it yet. No. And then I think on the rock in the hat, I think I sent Mason, because there was an article in the Ensign where they acknowledged it. I'm pretty certain it was the Ensign.
Yes, it was. That
I sent that
boggled
to him.
my mind. I was so shocked when the church shared that.
I think it was because Richard Bushman said we've got to stop portraying the inaccuracies in our art. We're going to get some negative feedback for that. And I was kind of like, that was a little too late.
Yeah, it was so interesting because I said something to my mom about that. I was like, Mom, did you know that he translated using a rock and a hat? And she's like, oh yeah, well, I heard that like a long time ago, but like, it doesn't matter. And I was like, what? Like, I don't know.
Right. And then when you add, it was the same rock he used in his treasure digging days that he got, criminal charges
Completely
for.
irrelevant.
Well, the church likes to push, like with Rod Meldrum. He was like, oh, Joseph just dug for this guy. He was just a digger. He's just a regular worker. But no. This guy came all the way down and hired Joseph specifically because of his abilities to look at a rock in the hat.
And once everybody in the church is mostly aware of the fact that he was involved in treasure digging, then you can come out and say, well, yeah, actually he was the perpetrator, right? If you soften the blow over 10, 20, 30 years, people forget and they just don't care as much anymore.
Right. If you
I'll
teach
accept
it
that. It's called an Overton window.
Right.
It's just, so do you know what an Overton window is? So if you imagine a window and looking through it, you're seeing ideas or whatever, right? So say you want, oh goodness, I can't think of a good example. You want gay marriage, right? So say you want gay marriage.
That's probably a bad example because you're going to show how an Overton window works to inoculate people.
That's what it is you basically, so
go ahead.
Okay, a better example. You go to your parents, what you really need is $10, but you ask your parents for $50. so that they're going to be like, whoa, no way, not $50. And then you come in with a lower answer. Well, what about $10? And like, oh, yeah, okay, I could do $10. Whereas if you'd come to them and said, hey, I need $10, they'd be like, no, I don't think so. I'm not giving that to you. And you wouldn't get what you need. Well, this Overton window just gradually moves to where you get what it is that you want.
Right. It's the idea of your visibility is limited because of the window. So as you introduce data differently, the brain is more willing to accept it. Like if I went to somebody on the street and said, hey, I've got this rock and a hat and I can go dig in your backyard and find treasure. Nowadays, no, people are going to be like, yeah, you are. Let's get you to a hospital and get you on some medicine. But back then, it was widely accepted because of the magical worldview of the time. So one of the reasons we whitewash it now is because now everybody's going to be like, well, that's kind of hokey. But it's you're like, well, because what the church has done is they've done, well, sometimes he used the rock and the hat. Like once he got really familiar with it, then he did the rock and the hat because he was just more familiar with it. But he still had the gold plates right there. And then when you look at the data, what does the data say, Julia, about those gold plates?
That they probably didn't exist and that the witnesses saw them with their spiritual eyes.
Right, that they were never in the room, that he actually never had golden plates. But they don't do that. They soften the blow. And then when we're teaching our kids, like our today's young children, it was a rock and a hat. Well, then when they hit adulthood, a rock and a hat is just as believable as an angel giving him gold plates out of a mountain. And he used these special spectacles to read them. Like when you're on the outside, an angel giving you gold plates. I mean,
it's all
gold plates.
unbelievable.
Well, guess what? Those gold plates, if there was that much gold, it would do what?
Be so heavy.
It would be so, and they would literally melt into each other. Like metal is too soft.
Well, the church says the apologists say it's tumbaga, not gold.
Now. Right. But
Yeah.
we all at some point believed the gold plate thing because we didn't understand how heavy gold is, and that a big thing of plates, or like his running through the forest with gold plates under his arm and
he
fighting
limped.
away with one. Right, he limped.
How? There's no way.
But in the story of him running, we didn't say he ran with a limp. We never say, we like our brain thought stops along the way. He had the surgery in his youth. But that doesn't mean that we all think of Joseph Smith as this powerful guy who actually had a limp. So the fact that he's running through the forest with a limp with hundreds of pounds of gold under his arm, fighting people off with one hand, like it's this superhero, what's his face, chopping the arms off of people. Like, do you know how hard it is to chop a frickin' arm off? Like in the OR, they use a saw that is electric to get it.
He had a really sharp sword.
Yeah.
Hammond.
Actually, it's not that hard. So you have a good sword. It's not that hard to chop an arm. So do you think we're running down this tangent or limping down this tangent?
But how many arms can you chop off before your blade is dull? Truly.
If you have good steel that is sharpened well, a lot.
But you know how much steel they have found in America?
Right, I know. There's other parts of the
I'm just
story.
kidding.
That part of the story is not as unbelievable,
Right.
but yes.
But again,
yeah.
I think
They had Damascus steel there. Duh, that's what we're talking about.
Shush! Enough already. Stop the tangent, Mason. You're normally the tangent
I didn't start this
stopper.
tangent. I just asked if we were running it or just walking
Didn't
it.
start the
That was my
tangent.
attempt to get you back.
Yeah. No, so I think that from that mental health perspective, as we gain the data, we need to recognize that in the beginning, it's going to be uncomfortable. Dissonance is healthy. It's there for a reason. It's there for us to go, whoa, check this data because this is uncomfortable. Our brain doesn't like change ever. But I think what we've done very well today in all of this really fun conversation is we've been able to draw the line from, look at the data, it doesn't match logical reasoning. So what does it mean? Because if God is a logical God, if God is a rational God, if God uses the law of science, if this world is a type and a practice for heaven, well, then what does the data show us? And I think that so often when we're in a place of transition, we feel completely overwhelmed. Like for me, when I got all of this data, I was like, oh, thank God. It was my permission slip out because I came to this, and my listeners are a little bit more aware. I came to the conclusion that the church was probably false based on what I was seeing in my clinic. I didn't have any of this data.
Which I think is beautiful.
And as I got the data, I was like, oh, thank God I can leave this, and I'm not afraid to leave it. Whereas Mason got the data first, and it was hard. It was overwhelming. And so I would say, hey, when things get hard and get overwhelming, instead of going back to what you've always studied over and over and over again, which is what the church tells you to do, find a source that you feel is credible. There are
like
so
Analyzing
many
Mormonism.
out there, like Analyzing Mormonism, like Mormonism Live. Like, find the host that has the personality that you feel most comfortable with. I absolutely love. So now I work with several people in the ex-Mormon space as a counselor or as a life coach, depending on the licensing laws and blah, 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 and what we're trying to accomplish. And it's so interesting to me. I have one client that is like, Nemo the Mormon is my go-to. I have one that literally waits for your content, Julia. And when I told that client, I was like, hey, she's responded and she's going to be on my podcast. He's like, it's going to be my favorite. Like, it's so awesome.
Much.
But find that resource that works for you, that resonates for you.
Yeah.
Check in with that resource and say, hey, are they being true to the data? And then, because the best predictor for future behavior is past behavior.
Right.
So you still need to check in with it. But when you find that source that resonates, that is doing some of that critical thinking, then lean into that. And by leaning in, I mean, give it space in your life.
Well, I leaned in and like literally because my source is Julia and we're dating. So
How did that lean work for you?
So you leaned in a couple different ways, huh?
It looks like she's leaning.
Yes, exactly.
That quote.
We just utilized that from Sleepless and not Sleepless. It was while you were sleeping. We just used that in one of our recent.
I'll be right over here, okay? Because it looks like he's leaning. Thank you.
Right, love it. Oh my goodness, I just lost a bit. So make space for that in your life. If it's not uncomfortable, if it is not challenging your previously held beliefs, question it. Because discomfort is normal. Discomfort means you're learning. Because we don't learn and grow without pain. Your bones did not grow without it occasionally being painful for you. Anybody who remembers growing pains, it was painful and it was unexplained pain and it made you uncomfortable. You cannot grow and heal from a behavioral perspective without some level of discomfort.
But the good news is after you're done going through all those growing pains, you're going to be in a much more comfortable place and a happier and more loving place.
Right.
Well, the church loves to say there's no growth in the comfort zone, no comfort in the growth zone. Is one of the things I used to say all the time as a bishop and as a gospel doctrine teacher. But the church likes to think that only applies to their material.
Right. That circular reasoning come back to the church.
So, I mean, maybe that's true, that you don't grow without a little bit of pain. But if the pain is always in the same thing and always this circular reasoning that always leads you back to the same thing, you're just hurting yourself for no real reason.
Absolutely. So is there any final thoughts before we close out today? Ooh, silence.
Well, I keep having this thought. Like, one of my posts that I did on my own personal Facebook, it was a while back. I shared a picture of my CTRing, which I have worn since I was 16, and it just means something different to me today. Mm-hmm. And I shared that, and I said, this means integrity to me. This means being honest, being truthful, being
right,
like doing the right thing. And then I had a lot of people, which I didn't feel the church was doing, and I was critical of that. And then I had a lot of people attack me. My mission president attacked me. My former bishop attacked me. It was bad. But I don't know why, but there was something about it where they felt like, and I was sharing truth claims. Like, sharing facts, sharing things all over my Facebook. But that one specifically, people got upset at. But the reason I do my TikTok is for that. It's because I have integrity. My goal is not to get people to leave the church. It's just to teach people. It's just to give them informed consent about the religion they belong to. And I don't know. I love giving these little snippets, but there's a power in telling the truth, and there's happiness. Like the church likes to say that they have a monopoly on happiness, but there's so much, like you said,
they don't
growth.
word it that way. But without the church, you will not be happy.
Right.
They say it without saying it.
But there is happiness outside the church if you allow yourself to even stay in the church or hold this nuance or hold these. You start questioning. You can grow. You can heal, and you can have happiness. And I believe that firmly. And I think my hope is that the church can change and become better, become healthier. That's
Well, and I think the church has the capacity to do that, but it's going to take a long time. So if you're coming at this with the hope that the church is going to change, maybe even in your lifetime, that might be an unrealistic expectation. But over the course of several decades, as our prophets die off and new ones come in with different values and different social norms, you're going to see that. I like to say that today our ex-Mormon community is planting the seeds so that our youth have a better tomorrow, because the church is going to last for a very long time because they have the financial ability.
That's the one that got me in trouble.
Is that the one with the arrow and the armor of God?
That's the one
my
that
gosh,
got
that
my
one
brothers
was,
in a tizzy right there.
Whew, that one was bad where that attack came. Yeah, it's kind of funny what things people get up in arms about.
Yes, for me it was I realized that I was a feminist, and then shortly after that I realized I was a lesbian, and then actually also I already knew I was an intellectual, and those three together are three things that the church tells you is the enemy of the church.
Boyd K. Packer's mortal enemy right there, for sure.
It was not intentional.
You might as well put horns on and a tail because you are the devil.
You know, I could rock that.
You would.
I have a little Halloween costume for you that's like got little devil horns and a tail. It's darling.
Of course, it only fits you when you're about 4 or 5 years old. But
Oh, okay.
All righty. All right. So I think that we've met our intent for today, which is finding value in truth telling. I also feel like this has really set us up for the rest of our series. So thank you so much for coming on. This has been
Thank you.
a blast of a day.
This has been so fun. I know we've been all over the
it.
place, but this has been really fun.
It's been, I've loved it. We'll have to have you back again. And do you want to put in any final plugins for your business or the work that you guys are doing? Do you have any specific websites other than Analyzing Mormonism?
So go there, and then the best way to support us would be there's donate buttons on the website, but if you purchase the books that we're publishing, they're going to get even better as time goes on. I'm just going to get better at it. So that, and then, just following Julia on TikTok or YouTube. Actually, we need more followers on YouTube. She just started moving her things over, and she doesn't have very many followers there. So
I think it's Rumble is also a great place to post, because I think it's Rumble. I'll double check with my media team.
Okay.
Because they're growing, because they're less censored than YouTube.
And their videos?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I think it's Rumble. I might be wrong, but I'll correct it at the end.
That's cool.
Here in a minute. Absolutely. So phenomenal. Can I also say, if you are in a position that you are within the LGBT community or you're writing books that support that community, please reach out and submit those manuscripts.
Yeah, so hang
on. Are you
on.
guys ready for that yet?
So our submissions are closed right now. We have some that they're going through the publishing, the editing process, and so we're not quite there yet. Maybe September, October.
But if you would like to help us publish books, we need more capital to be able to afford to produce more books. So let us know if you want to help us in that area.
Awesome. So keep your eyes out. They are a brand new publishing firm, publisher, wanting to meet that genre. So any help you can get is phenomenal.
So by supporting us, you're in a way supporting more LGBTQ, more queer books and more Mormon books. So
and diversity in general. We also try to include racial and physical diversity as well.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. So we will say our normal thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Love you guys.
Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma is hosted by Sarah and Mason Westbrook, produced by Daisy Girl Communications, LLC, and Alex Vidalis. Please join our community on Facebook. Music provided by Musa and Don Worthy Music.
America. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. At Grand Canyon University, we believe in equal opportunity, and the American dream starts with purpose. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.